Okay. Good morning, everyone. Oh, just back from the after party. I just rolled in. Just got in, everybody. My sixes to nines. That song always puts me in a good mood. All right, everyone. How we doing? Good morning. Guten Morgen. Bon matin. A morning stream. Oh my god. Oh my god. Diet Cola, thank you for the 18 months. Zyron Blue, thank you for the 30 months. Hannah, thank you for the 7 months. Von Thunder, thank you for the 4 months. Comster, thank you for the 22 months. Tell us about the party. Whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa. Oh, I will. Harry Styles was seen in proximity to a recording studio. It is, in fact, a good morning. Harry Styles is back in the fucking studio, thank God. Dragon Army, thank you for the 5 gifted subs. As a reminder, if you ever wanted to gift subs, I think it is 2 more days that you have discounted gifted subs. Why didn't I get to meet Patty LuPone? Because she hates me. No, because she wasn't there. Unfortunately, she was not there, so I'm just gonna go. I'm gonna have to like stalk her elsewhere. So are you doing morning for now? Why the change? So the reason I'm streaming this morning is because I am going to be chatting with tech reporter Taylor Lorenz, who I've had on the show before. But yeah, so I reached out to her to talk about the new Netflix show Adolescence and like the response to it from parents and politicians calling on yet again a ban on smartphones, a ban on social media access, which on the surface may seem like, oh, okay, that'll protect the kids. And the reality is that no, that's actually not the right solution here. So this is something Taylor has written about a bunch, and this is also one of those topics that I know I have changed my mind on. Where like in the past I was very much so, oh yeah, the internet is evil and it's making kids mentally ill and it's bad and we should ban it. And then I realized that like that's part of what we call a moral panic. And also Taylor also sent me something that I haven't had a time to take a look at yet, but let me hold on a second. Let me pull up something here. The internet is gay and evil. The internet is gay and evil. Anyway, so that's why I'm doing a stream this morning. But I do want to be trying to do morning streams here and there. I will say, y'all, I went to bed at 2:30 last night, which is huge. I'm trying to incorporate morning streams in. It's not going to be like every fucking morning, but also just in a habit of like getting myself to sleep better. Also, the nose strips have been going crazy. Truly life-changing. I'm going to become an alpha dog TikTok content creator where I'm wearing the nose strips and the mouth tape. And I'm going to take a full ass bath in Saratoga. I'm not even going to dunk my face. I'm going to shower in Saratoga sparkling water. Yeah. That's the level that I'm taking it to. I'm a huge fan of them because then I get to watch the entire stream live. Yeah, and that's the other thing too. I know that like not everybody in the community is a late night owl, so getting to do morning streams here and there to catch our community members who are East Coast, who are EU, you know. As a UK viewer, I appreciate the early stream. See? I'm a night owl, but EST. Yeah, I'm Pacific time and I'm a night owl. So I will be ending streams sometimes when people are waking up and they're like, what? Caroline's still live? I'm like, I'm still alive. Mina, thank you for the 12 months. Metal Poof, thank you for the prime. With how my schedule is now, I can barely catch the late streams, so occasional morning streams are great. Yeah. So we are gonna be, you know, the thing was too is that it was hard for me to try and do morning streams in the old place because I was streaming out of our bedroom, and that is not fun for Will. We all remember the occasional morning stream I would do where he would still be in bed in the background, like, pay no attention. Pay no attention to what's going on back there. Kwan Clips Industrial Complex is going to go wild with the added morning streams. That's right. We're still waiting for the Kwan Clips Industrial Complex to pop off. Are you still doing movie night tonight? Okay. So Will and I have to do a stream together to promote A Working Man, and we're not sure what we're going to do for it yet. Because I was going to do movie night, and then I was like, fuck, I can't do movie night because I got to do this Working Man thing. Yeah, should we just watch The Beekeeper? You know, classic Jason Statham film. Yeah, we'll just watch A Working Man on stream. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm talking to Taylor at 10, so we have like 45 minutes to chit chat, look at some stuff. And let me start off by telling you guys, even though I updated in the Discord, but I will tell you guys, hold on, let me switch to some lo-fi. Let's get a lo-fi morning mix, something mellow, something nice. Let's see. There we go. Okay, that's a little too chill. Sometimes lo-fi, it's too chill. It makes me eepy. Let's see. EDM lo-fi. Okay, that's better. The Substance playlist. Let's just rock the Substance playlist. So last night I ended stream early so I could get over to the Glaad Awards. And it was funny because both Austin and Will were like, "Oh my God, we could have used you as our media liaison. Like, had you giving us notes?" And I went, I know. I was watching the stream and you guys were great, but like I was going crazy. And Will was like, "Well, I invited you." I was like, "Yeah, but I thought it was like to a dinner, like it's just with your team. And then to the after party, which I ended up going to." He's like, "No, I wanted you to come as the media liaison." And I went, I feel like that wasn't I didn't understand that. He's like, "Yeah, I could have had you here." And I was like, I don't remember any type of explaining this is like, you can be our media liaison on the red carpet, because I would have been there. Now, granted, he did invite me to dinner and the after party, but I was like, I was not computing that meant I could have been there where you guys were like Patty LaPone was walking behind you. But anyway, there's always next time. That's true. There's always next time. And I met a bunch of people last night at the after party, which was really fun. So I got to like have the conversations for the most part that I wanted to have. I didn't get to see JoJo Siwa, which is crazy because I thought we were going to take shots at the bar. Cannot believe. I cannot believe she wasn't there. And I said to Austin, I was like, I can't believe when you talked to JoJo, you didn't introduce her as the inventor of gay pop. And he goes, wait, what? He's like, she invented gay pop. And I went, oh God. No. You're so straight. I know. What did you wear? I just ended up wearing the rose outfit that I had someone in chat was like, oh, that was cute that you wore in Japan. And I straight up got ready in 5 minutes and I pulled up. I was like, next year I'm getting a whole ass fit. I'm getting a whole fit for the Glaad Awards. Loved Will's suit, but I actually saw a celebrity from the past for it. Okay, put some respect on Andrew Garfield's name. That's who we're talking about here. Yeah, he looked great though, and he got a lot of compliments on the fit. A lot of compliments. Will was wearing Andrew Garfield. Yeah, he was. So Andrew Garfield wore that Gucci suit, and Will was wearing Andrew Garfield wearing the suit. They both looked so good. They did look so good. They did. So anyway, I pull up to the party. I meet the styling team. They were I think I got this is one, like, seriously, no one will compliment you the way that women and gay men do. And Austin and Will's styling team, which I didn't even feel that great pulling up because I threw on an outfit that I had in the closet and didn't have time to wash my hair. But it was like one of these, like, oh, okay, yep, yeah, we have heard so much about you, and now we see you. And I'm just like, this is why I'm going to spend the rest of my life with women and gay men. Yep. So I met them, and then I kind of was like, okay, who's here at the party at the after party, which was at the Beverly Hilton. I was like, who's here that I really want to say hi to and have a conversation with? And the first person I spotted was Harper Steele. So I said to Will, I was like, we need to go say hi to Harper. And he was like, I really tried to get Harper on our stream, but she was apparently the one person. So if you don't know Harper Steele, let me pull up. This is Harper Steele. Harper Steele, who is the former head writer at SNL, BFFs with Will Ferrell, and who made the documentary Will and Harper, which I don't think was nominated. No. Was this? No, I don't think it was Oscar nominated, but it was nominated for other stuff. So they made this really lovely documentary on Netflix called Will and Harper, and it's about them reuniting as friends after Harper has now transitioned. So Harper and Will, who go back decades to SNL. And Harper was behind a lot of Will Ferrell's kookiest sketches. I think it had a SAG nom. Yeah, I think it had like BAFTA, SAG nom. I can't remember. That is the old award season. Once we finish, we move on. But anyway, so they during the pandemic, Harper transitioned, or she had like started to transition before, but she sent out an email to her close friends, which included Will Ferrell, to basically reintroduce herself and say like, I have transitioned and it's scary but beautiful, and I just hope that we can still be friends, basically. So they decided to do this documentary together in order to have a positive representation of what it means to be 63 years old, like in your 60s, and transition like Harper did, to show Harper, who's a person that like loves dive bars and loves going to like the racetrack, is from Iowa, which we talked about in our conversation, and like very much so identifies with middle America, and wasn't sure if she would still be able to still be able to go to these places and do these things that she loved very much before she transitioned. So it's a cross-country road trip that Will and Harper embark on, and they end up in Los Angeles, and then they're like, should we go run it back? Bruh, I thought this XQC stream. Yeah, people do commonly confuse us. Yeah. When you think of me, you definitely think of XQC. XQ Kwan, that's right. Bruh, this is not XQC stream. This is XQ Kwan stream. So anyway, Will has like the SNL thing with Harper, where he really wanted to just be like, SNL meant so much to me when I was growing up, yada yada. And then I wanted to talk to Harper about the documentary and just how just about our community. So we had a really great conversation. And anyway, I was saying that Will tried to get her to be on the live stream, but she was like the one celebrity whose publicist went, yours is the one interview she doesn't want to do, because she's very shy actually, and was nervous of the live streaming element, which I was literally talking about this yesterday, where Twitch is still this new thing in the entertainment industry, where this is like the first time at something such as the Glaad Awards that you have Twitch streamers, that you have a Twitch stream. So more people are learning about Twitch, but there's people who are, they still don't really understand it. It makes them nervous, which I totally get. I understand. And so anyway, that was why Harper didn't do an interview on Will and Austin's stream, but I went and had a conversation with her, and yeah, it was lovely. We were just talking about life and talked about the documentary, and she was like, tell your community to keep up the good fight. It was cool figuring out what video games everyone is into. Yeah, that was definitely a fun element of like, hey, everybody loves video games. What video games do you love? What kind of coffee are you sipping on? It's just a latte. And it's almost out, and I need more. And then I had And then I talked to Paul Downs, who is the co-creator of the show Hacks, which I have only talked about a million times. So I went up to him and I was like, I love Hacks. I think it's some of the best writing, some of the best television writing out there. I think you guys are great. I was out there on the strike lines and I saw you guys all the time. And I also I just watched Hannah's speech at the Human Rights Campaign. So we were talking about that and yada, yada. And anyway, he told me to DM him, which I forgot to do. He told me to DM him because I was like, yeah, I want to, I don't even remember what I said. I think I was like, I want to bring you guys on stream. I did also tell him that if I ever met Jean Smart, I would shit myself and die. And he went, yeah, no, she's a legend. Do it now. It's always, it's this funny thing where a lot of times I'll meet people who are just killing it. Okay. They're like some of the hottest showrunners, filmmakers, etc. And I'll be like, well, how could I even reach out to them? And then I'll look and I'll have more social media followers than they do. Like, that's the crazy thing now. And I don't even have that big of a following, but I'll like go look at a writer who I really love and be like, oh, I'd love to talk to them on the stream, but like, how could I ever contact them? And then I'm like, oh, I actually have a bigger following. So they might be like, oh, this is somebody legitimate. Like, that's what's crazy about content creation and streaming is like how tuned in the community is across platforms. And it helps with reaching out to people who I want to connect with. Who'll be like, oh, this seems like somebody who's got a legitimate person, you know? And that's how networking works. How many it really is. Yes. It is a like whatever your following is or whatever. Nuclear level humble brag, JK. It's not even me trying to be like, I'm so popular. It's me being like, okay, so I have a dedicated following. I have a community who is active on my various social media platforms. So if I go to someone in the film industry who I really want to connect with to either, talk on stream, et cetera, then I have to remember that like I have that. Like I always think, well, what can I offer them? Who am I? Why would they even want to chat with somebody like me? Which is silly. I'm doing a creative writing degree, and that's one of the things we need to do is grow a following online. Yeah, unfortunately, it is a part of the creative arts. It's very much so a part of being in the entertainment industry. Being in content creation is being on all these platforms and doing stuff to keep growing. Twitch, IG, YouTube, and TikTok are changing what folks can and want to do. It's fascinating, also scary / weird simultaneously. Yeah, and I think more traditional entertainment folks are looking at a platform like Twitch and going, okay, I don't want to be behind the times here. I should get with the picture. I should I should figure out what this platform is. Like I talked to a couple people last night, including Nico Santos, who was in Crazy Rich Asians. And he was like, oh my God, I felt so old when I was asked to, like, if I wanted to be interviewed live on Twitch, and I had no idea what Twitch was. I said, well, now you do. He goes, yes, I do. And I said, and you have been on Twitch. Like, you not only know what Twitch is now, but you've been on Twitch. And I could see it was like this, oh my God, I feel so old, but also it was pretty cool. Like, am I relevant to the kids? Is that the kids they're doing? I think the door got open last year, for better or worse, with the Trump camp elevating pods and non-traditional media. Yes. I mean, there were like liberal family members of mine, conservative family members of Will's, who were asking us, do you know these people? I mean, they just assume like, okay, this is a YouTuber or content creator. Will and Caroline must know them. It's like, yeah, I mean, I know of them. I'm not personally friends with them. But it was like normie voters on both sides of the aisle who were like seeing that this was a part of Trump's campaign, of his media strategy, and we're like, who are these people? What's going on? Do you know Mr. Beast? I think you're a great bridge because you're hip enough to be on Twitch, but boomer enough to relate. Thank you. You're right. I am hip enough to be on Twitch, but boomer enough that I can have a conversation with somebody who's 65. What does skibbity mean? They figure it's a very small platform when there's a lot of creators on here. Well, I just think like as more creators have moved into have like moved into these celebrity stratosphere, you know, you've got Kai Cenat doing all these crazy collabs. You've got Hassan who's like become more known to normies because of his collabs that he's done. More people are learning about Twitch. And then you had fucking Aiden Ross and XQC do that stream with Donald Trump. So I feel like in particular the last year, Twitch's name recognition, people who may not understand it, but like have heard of Twitch or like recognize live streaming as this thing that people do, that has gone up. Yeah, you nailed down the tech incompetence really well. Boomers can relate. Okay, whoa. Okay. Whoa there. Also, you can speak to the suburban white women of Chicagoland. You know, that is one thing that I do feel like I feel like I knew how to do before I worked in politics, but working in politics certainly made me better at this, at like being able to talk to a variety of people. Do you live in Austin? I do not. Nope. Okay, so what else can I tell you guys? So I talked to Harper Steele. I talked to Hacks. I was, oh God, I can't remember their names, but I was talking to this group of youngins. I think they worked in podcasting. Anyway, we just got to talking, and we were talking about Rachel Zegler, and we were talking about Melissa Barrera. We were talking about smear campaigns. And they were like, oh my God, they said, it's really refreshing to hear you say these things because we work in podcasting and it's already hard feeling like we are in these very male dominated spaces. And we are trying to, like, I think one of the girls worked for it was an all woman podcast. And she said, because I was talking about how most of like podcasters and content creators and commentators who would talk about at length something like the Disney Rachel Zegler debacle are doing so from a very reactionary perspective. And they were like, yeah, you know, we didn't realize how much that dominates, but I feel like all I've been getting fed to me is that, like, whenever I've seen anything about Blake Lively or whenever I've seen anything about Rachel Zegler, even like in the podcasting world where it's like, this is not this there's only one main narrative that's being presented. Space Cadet, thank you for the 9 months. So they were like, it's crazy to hear you talking about this because there's just we just don't see it that often. I was like, yeah, that's because these topics are just dominated. They're absolutely dominated by right-wing content creators, or even like people who will call themselves apolitical. We're all apolitical, aren't we? Apolitical, but are using very reactionary language. Are you streaming mornings now? Here and there. Okay, occasionally I have a conversation with Taylor Lorenz. And let me just check in and make sure she's still good for 10. Skibbity. Yeah, we're all apolitical, everyone. Did you meet Michael Urie? I did meet him. I walked up and I immediately talked about how much I loved Ugly Betty. That show meant everything to me. Loved Ugly Betty. He's great in Shrinking. And that was kind of the crux of the night, because I think other people who I would have wanted to talk to didn't go to the afters. But I met a bunch of cool people. It was exciting to be there. Didn't think that was something that I like. The Glaad Awards was something that I would end up at in my life, but I went last night and I told Will and Austin, I was like, next year, I'm showing the fuck up, okay? The guy who did Crazy Rich Asian. Yep, I did meet Will Neff. Mm-hmm. He was fine. It was okay. Did Ben Platt selflessly leave his family to complain about how... Okay, I did have a moment where like I thought I saw Ben Platt at the Glaad Awards, but I don't think it was him. And I was like, Ben, where's your father? Because obviously he can't leave you to... you're at the Glaad. If you're at the Glaad Awards, your father must be here because you can't, as his adult baby son, you must always be in his proximity. Can we see you in any stream? No, it wasn't streamed. Isn't that the other one? Yes, that is the other one. I feel like maybe Jonah Platt was there. I can't see I can't see him being there. I feel like he is, you know, it's interesting. I would love, okay, let me speak frankly. So I feel like, not even just I feel like, one thing I've noticed in Hollywood is that there are way more people who are, I would say, on the spectrum of pro-Palestine to at least critical of what Israel is doing. But because of the culture of silence and the blacklisting and just people not wanting to get involved because they're afraid of getting smeared, they have seen enough notable figures get smeared because they have said things like, stop killing children. They have advocated for Palestinian safety, for humanitarian aid, you know, those really controversial things. And the sense I have gotten is that even though it seems as if there's only a few individuals in the industry who are pro-Palestine, it's actually way more. And so it's not wanting to rock the boat. Yeah, I mean, they look at what happened to someone like Susan Sarandon, who's Oscar winner Susan Sarandon. Very, very famous actress. And she was dropped by her agency, and she's been blacklisted in Hollywood. Make no mistake, Susan Sarandon's activism and advocacy has absolutely hurt her career. And Susan is, how old is Susan? She's, Susan's 78. I think I did this before. I think the last time I looked up her age, I was like, God, she looks so good. What the fuck? My God. Susan's almost 80 years old. Okay. She was in films in the 70s. Susan had a really long career, but even still, with her with her star power in Hollywood, she's faced repercussions. But Susan is also almost 80 years old, and it's one of those where, like, she had a very long career and is now really focused on, like, every time I see Susan Sarandon, she's at a rally, she's at a protest. Whereas younger people in Hollywood who haven't had the long career that Susan had, who are very much so worried about being cut down at the knees before they can really even have their career. It's scary for them. And they've seen what's happened to young performers. I mean, like, when I was talking to Paul Downs about Hannah Einbinder, who is Jewish. She is a queer Jewish woman who stars in Hacks and gave that speech at Human Rights Campaign, where she was talking about how the reason that that she as a Jewish woman has to advocate for Palestine is because of what she was taught growing up, the tenets of Judaism, and not using Judaism as an excuse for murdering civilians. And anyway, she's dealing with a lot of shit now. Like, this is just how crazy it is. And so it's like, all right, Melissa and people like Melissa and people like Rachel, that's one thing. But then to have also a Jewish woman who is active in her, who's active in her Judaism, also be getting harassed and have a lot of shit thrown her way because of the things that she has said. People look at that and they're like, man, like, my hands are tied. What am I supposed to do here? But so anyway, that being said, like, I do always think it's kind of illuminating how whenever I'm in spaces where there are entertainment industry folks, it's like, on the one hand, it is good to know that there are a lot more people who are looking at what's going on and being like, this is fucked. We don't support this. But that there are a lot of people who are scared to say anything, to publicly voice their dissent because of the current environment. It's really tough to think the reward outweighs the risk when looking at how much someone could change. Yeah. Yeah. Um, okay. I want to look at this before we get started here. See you later, concussed. Imagine your boss flies to your house to intimidate you. Yeah. Imagine your boss who's 3 times your age, one of the biggest producers in Hollywood, flies to where you live and is like, you need to delete your Twitter post. And then you tell them no. You're like, I don't think so. I mean, that's pretty badass. I don't think a lot of people could have stood on 10 toes in the way that Rachel did, where she refused to delete it, you know? This is a girl who, mind you, has only been in Hollywood for the last 5 years. She was a nobody. She was plucked from obscurity. She was literally just a theater girl in high school when she booked the role of Maria in West Side Story. And it really is one of those rare stories of somebody who doesn't have any connections, who hadn't been auditioning in the biz for years, who they just, it's like a 1 in a million type thing. I know she's playing Evita in on the West End this summer. God, I would love to go to that show. New tweet from A24. Is this about that fucking warfare film? A few favorites from set with the best cast and crew of Death of a Unicorn. I watched the trailer for that. Wasn't super into it. You know, I will be watching A24's Warfare, though, because I just can't get enough of War is Hell. I do love Jenna, though. I have to point out this Cosmopolitan tweet. Let's just say we don't play when it comes to our girl, Rachel Zegler. Cosmopolitan, in other words, said, fuck you, Variety. We talked about the trailer for One Battle After Another. Yeah, we watched it yesterday. Do you think that could be why she felt so empowered to stand up for her beliefs? Do you think that could be... Oh, wait. Why Rachel felt so empowered? Because she was still new to the industry? No, I don't think so. I think it would actually be the opposite of like, damn, I don't really have much power in this situation. I'm still a relative newcomer with only a handful of credits under my belt, even though she has just in the 5 years she's been a celebrity, been hugely successful. You know, she won a Golden Globe for her acting debut. But I think Rachel is one of those rare celebrities at her young age who I think she just believes what she believes in, and it was more important for her to stand on that belief than to cater to the producer of Snow White. I think she was always outspoken even before she got big, and that rubbed a lot of people the wrong way, even though she's correct. Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. It is one of those things where, like, if you think about, I think it's an easier said than done thing, where a lot of us would be like, oh, well, I wouldn't delete it either, or I would stand up to Mark Platt. But if, like, in all reality, Hollywood is so competitive. There are few people who will make it in the way that Rachel Zegler made it. And the fact that she was plucked out of obscurity, that she was just a normie who became a star because she starred in Steven Spielberg. Her acting debut was Steven Spielberg's West Side Story. That's crazy. Crazy. And I think a lot of people who are, I don't know, who will never be in a position like that will never understand that pressure. Mark Platt is one of the biggest producers in Hollywood. Like, this is a guy who can make or break your career. And Rachel does not have the power that somebody like Mark Platt has. And she still stood up to him. She still, even though I'm sure everybody in her life was advising her, was being like, you're going to lose your career. This is going to hurt your career. You will not get cast outside of theater. And she was still like, well, so be it. I finished Adolescence last night. I'm still in shock. All right, let's switch gears for a second here because in just a little bit, I'm going to be talking to Taylor. So, Adolescence, which is the show on Netflix that has everybody talking. I think it's already been viewed by like 66 million people have watched it. Oh, this show is very popular. It was the first streaming show to top UK charts. It's a smash hit, and a lot of adults who are parents have watched this show and they are terrified. They're freaking out. A lot of people are talking. You know how we had women talking? Well, now we have people talking. And what's been happening is that parents and other adults are panicking, and politicians are once again renewing calls to ban social media, to take smartphones away from kids as the solution to the problems that are presented in the show Adolescence. Hoy. So Adolescence, as a reminder, it's a drama. It's a 4-part series, and it is about a 13-year-old boy in a small town in the UK who is arrested and charged with killing his female classmate. And you know early on, this is not a spoiler, that he killed this girl. So a 13-year-old boy murders his female classmate, and it's not like some mystery, some twist, you know, who really killed Katie, but it's examining why this murder took place. How did a boy as young as Jamie, the 13-year-old, how did a boy as young as Jamie do something so violent, and like why? No, it's not a documentary. No, it's a fictionalized series. But the writers of the show were inspired to make this show because they were becoming increasingly disturbed reading stories of adolescent males committing knife crimes against adolescent females. And they were like, what the hell is going on? Why are these young boys like acting so violently? What's happening here in the culture? And then they were directed to the manosphere and to the online culture of misogyny and sexism that a young boy like Jamie is subjected to. And they started looking at all of this and were like, okay, we're going to make this show that takes a look at this online culture, that references very popular manosphere creators like Andrew Tate, and that is essentially a look at what is happening with the youth and their, like, what they're being exposed to, what they're experiencing online. Yeah. Toxic bro, incel culture, all that. Okay, so according to the streamer, it was the most watched show on the platform in dozens of countries after it debuted, including the United States. In Britain, the show has been more than a topic of workplace chatter. It's reignited discussion about whether the government should restrict children's access to smartphones to stop them from accessing harmful content. Newspapers have published dozens of articles about adolescence, which Thorne wrote with the actor Stephen Graham, who stars in the show, plays the father. A Times of London headline called it the TV drama that every parent should watch. And campaigners for a phone ban in schools have reported a surge in support. In Britain's parliament, lawmakers have used the show to make political points. Last week, Prime Minister Keir Starmer told the House of Commons that he was watching Adolescence with his 2 children and said that action was needed to address the fatal consequences of young men and boys viewing harmful content online. Yeah, you know who I'm not going to trust to fix any type of situation? Keir Starmer. Thorne said in an interview that he was glad that the Prime Minister mentioned his show. Still, he added he wanted British lawmakers to do more than talk about this drama. He wants them to pass a law that bans young people from accessing social media until they are 16. Yeah, Mr. Kid Starver. Did you know TV shows are real? No, I didn't. I do know that birds aren't real, though. Adolescence has appeared at a moment of growing global concern about the impact of smartphones on children's health and social development. Last year, Australia barred children under 16 from social media, though the law includes many exemptions. In February, Denmark's government announced it would soon ban smartphones in schools, something that France has already implemented in primary and middle schools. There seems to be no appetite for a similar law among Britain's governing Labour Party, but there's a long history here of television shows that transform topics of social concern into the most urgent political issues of the day, going back to the 1960s when the BBC broadcast gritty dramas like Ken Loach's Kathy Come Home. That show shone a light on the plight of homeless people, a topic that was little discussed at the time. Okay. So, this is what we are going to be talking about today, tonight. And they solved homelessness forever. Yes, they did. Yes, indeed. All right. I will be back in a jiff. Okie dokie. Let me. Oh. I think I have to do that. Okay. Cool. Let's see if that works. Man, why does it always fucking do this? Why does it always make this impossible to... Come on, dude. I'm gonna leave the meeting. Okay. Okay, why does it say field? I turned my camera off though. Oh, this is literally every time. Every time I fail to like be able to figure this out. Video settings. Okay, let me try that and then go to cam link. Ah! Please select another video camera. Okay, so no, that is okay. Okay, so if I turn that off, I guess I could do this. Hold on, let me try that. One of these days I will figure this out. Oh, okay. I can run my virtual camera. There we go. Yay! Yippee! Okay, and then I'm going to turn this off. And then I'm going to... Okay, test. Oh my god, my gray hairs. Okay, let me make this look. All right, turn off the music. Turn off the lights. Okay. All right, and then I want to link Taylor's. That is Taylor's Substack. All right. Okie dokie. Let's make sure that this works.
Hi.
Hello.
Wait, let me see if the audio. Can you hear me?
Yeah, yes, I can hear you. Yeah, I'm a professional streamer. Why is this mic always doing weird stuff? Stop it. Okay. All right. Can you hear me?
Oh shit! I fucked up the mic again.
Yeah, I just dropped my microphone, so
There, I just
you know.
It's one of those mornings. I stayed up
Oh
till
my
3
God.
a.m. for no reason.
Wait.
So I'm really tired.
Yeah, I went to the Glaad Awards after party last night.
Oh yeah, actually, that is so funny because I was awake and my friend was texting me from there, and I was like, "That sounds fun." But I was like,
So why were you up till 3? Because that's why I was up.
I wish I was at the Glaad Awards party. I was working on a video about about these stupid laws that I've become obsessed with that are bad.
Yes, which we will be talking about. So for those of you who do not know, okay, wait 1 second. Where's my Twitch chat? There we go. For those of you who do not know, I've had Taylor LORENZ on the show before. I've referenced her writing before, but this is Taylor LORENZ. She is a tech and culture reporter. She knows everything there is to know about the internet and the history of the internet. And today we're going to be talking about the show Adolescence, which have you seen it yet?
No, I haven't seen it yet. And I literally want to watch it this weekend now because everybody's talking about it.
Yeah, everybody's talking about it. It is the first streaming show to top the UK charts. Like that's how huge it is. It's been watched by over 60 million people. So it is like one of the shows of the moment. And it has a lot of parents very concerned. And let me tell you, so I'm going to Chicago this weekend because I am going to be co-hosting and presenting an award at the Ambies, which is the podcast award show. My mom...
I didn't know there was a podcast
Yeah,
award
that's
show.
what people keep saying. They're like, I didn't even know that podcasting had awards. And I was like, oh, yeah. No, they do. It's...
Listen to my podcast, Power User.
Yeah, there you go. Power User.
Yeah.
Power User. And also your Substack is User Mag, which I have tagged there. So my mother has, when I'm going to be home, she has organized a community meeting at our house for me to lead because a lot of people in her community have watched Adolescence and they are all panicking. A lot of parents of young men, young boys. Are you okay?
Sorry. Yeah, actually. Can you hold on 1 second?
Yeah.
Hold on 1 second.
Oh my God, that scared me for a second. So, Caroline, tell us how to fix this issue. Yes. Oh my God. My heart rate is up because I haven't slept enough and I drank a coffee that had like 3 shots. All good.
A squirrel knocked over one of my hummingbird feeders.
Oh
Very
no.
LA problem.
What a dastardly squirrel.
Okay, wait. So sorry, you were
Okay,
saying.
so my mom has organized this thing and she called me and she was like, I'm going to keep it small to like 20 to 30 people. And I went, that is not small. But anyway, so a lot of people have been calling her because my mom is like the person in her community who through me understands, even though she doesn't understand, but she has a better understanding of like content creation, Twitch, the manosphere, these issues these things that are explored in a show like Adolescence. So she's kind of been like the source of information for a lot of these liberal suburbanites who, between the 2024 election, a show like Adolescence, are going, what is the manosphere? What's going on? So my mom was like, I need you to lead this community meeting to explain to people what's happening and like what we can do about it. And I already know going in that the attitude and the assumption is, well, we should ban social media for kids, right? We should take away their smartphones, because this is the reaction that we've been seeing from a lot of adults and from lawmakers already. But in the aftermath of this show, Adolescence, like I was just looking at a piece in, where was it? The New York Times.
Oh, they're the worst.
I know. The New York Times, which is Adolescence has people talking, its writer wants lawmakers to act. And it basically gets into, and it gets into the concerns that have been elicited from this show and how in lawmakers like Prime Minister Keir Starmer is using this to score political points and is talking about how, we need to pass laws that ban young people from accessing social media until they are 16. And this is a belief. This is an attitude that we have seen a lot of. Australia just recently passed. They recently passed that bill to ban social media for kids under 16. Yeah, we obviously have the Kids Online Safety Act. So we're gonna get into all this. I know that this is something you have written about, that you feel very passionately about, and that I feel like,
because I actually care about kids.
Yes,
I want to see kids killing themselves.
Yeah, and I feel like the prevailing narrative, what seems to be the stronger narrative here, is that social media and the internet is causing young people to experience mental illness, that this is why young boys are committing violent crimes, that sexism and misogyny in elementary schools, junior highs and high schools is coming from this really toxic culture online. So I think we need to sort out like what are real concerns and then what is part of this moral panic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's all a moral panic.
Yeah. So I want to start off.
Could say the same thing, by the way. I'm sure. I think we're both like around the same age, but like this is so, it's the exact same thing as the video game panic and the rap music
Yes.
panic before that and all that.
So
But
let me
yeah.
start off and ask you to talk about what is a moral panic and like how do we separate when something is alarming from how to not be alarmist.
Well, every single time there has been a change in an advancement in technology and media over the past 100 years, probably before that, although we didn't really have mass media in the same way, we have seen moral panics ensue. These are top-down driven moral panics from conservatives aimed at using basically whipping parents and the public up into a frenzy about things to ultimately dismantle civil liberties and attack usually LGBTQ people and other marginalized groups. So you saw this. I made actually a video on my channel that I need to re-upload because I said the wrong. I said some banned words on YouTube and I talk about people killing themselves. So God forbid.
Oh no.
So I have to like re-upload it. But basically, even back in the day when all of this stuff that they're saying about social media, every single thing they have said about every single major technology. So, there's this man, Jonathan Haidt, who's the biggest
Oh
hack of all
yes.
time. Liar, 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 liar. Nothing in his stupid reason has done it, but there's a bunch of really great takedowns of his book, but absolutely, this man does not study kids and social media. There is actually consensus among everyone who's all the top researchers rather that study this exact topic, which is kids, social media, mental health, da da da. There is absolutely no correlation between, the mental health crisis among youth and kids' social media use at all. In fact, there's a positive correlation, which is that sometimes, kids are finding more community online and actually connecting online.
Yeah. So
But
Jonathan Haidt, he wrote that book, The Anxious Generation, right?
yeah, terrible book that is full of it is 100% pseudoscience. It's very reminiscent of this other book called which was by Frederick Wortham back in the 1950s. So first you had a moral panic about novels. Kids were addicted to novels. They were reading novels too much and they should ban
Yes.
novels and they should, you need to put limits on novels and all this stuff. They wanted to prevent kids from reading the newspapers. When the telephone came out, it was blamed for, I think it was like 9/10 of divorce because people were talking on the phone. They were getting heated. It was
Women
being
be
blamed.
talking.
It was being blamed for murder because people could get upset on phone calls and that would make them murder people. It's insane. So, but I think, when we think about media, there was this guy, Frederick Wortham in the 1950s, who was the exact same person as Jonathan Haidt. Like this man was like bar for bar. And he had a book called The Seduction of the Innocent. And
Ah.
it was all about comic books. And at that time, the moral
Mm.
panic, of course, was about comic books, which were widely popular among children. He said, of course, same thing they say about social media. It's giving nefarious messages. It's causing them mental health breakdown. Like Jonathan Haidt, he sort of came from the psychology world, which actually is a terrible. Those people don't know anything about, like, you'd think that those people are qualified to talk about kids and mental health. They're actually not because they don't understand technology or its effect on young people. It's actually not what they study.
Yeah,
It,
I think
sorry.
what you're saying about how with the advent of every new technological discovery, there always is going to be the ensuing panic around it about how it's exposing our youth to things that are really harmful. Like literally, chat, there was a panic about young women being corrupted by romantic fantasies.
Yes.
Once upon a time, they were like, young women are gonna become whores because they're reading all these romance books. Like point to any new discovery, any
Beepers.
yes.
They arrested.
Yes.
Let's talk about how they arrested. They arrested nearly 100, I think it was almost over 80 kids in outside Chicago. They arrested countless kids, teenagers, for carrying beepers in the 90s because they thought that having a beeper would lead you into a life of crime and, depravity, and it
I'm
was
just
affecting
imagine you
children's
pull up
mental
your,
health to
yeah,
get the alerts.
you pull up your beeper and it's time to do crime.
Well, it was mostly parents trying to keep in touch with their
Yeah.
kids and know when to pick them up. And every time they interviewed a kid, the kid would say that. But I mean, I would say the closest correlation to what we're seeing now is the moral panic around video games.
Mm-hmm.
As a millennial, post Columbine, when it was like school shooters or they watch too many video games, right? That's why they're school shooters and gamers. And there was this effort to tie gaming to, social isolation and all of this, is terrible, all the stuff that they're saying about social media, basically,
Yeah.
about video.
Which is why it's very funny to me, all of these reactionary gamers, like an Asmongold, who it's like, do you understand that you love video games? You don't want video games to go away. You don't want legislation against video games. And yet here you are repeating rhetoric that is used by the same side that fear mongers and moral panics around the very thing that you love. Like
Yeah.
that is conservative, right wing, just very classic rhetoric that has been used historically in these various moral panics. And so I think the reason I want to talk about like why moral panics are on the surface seems reasonable. Like you don't really understand how nefarious it is unless you go a little bit deeper. Like why moral panics are so effective, no matter the no matter who is susceptible to it, like what their politics are. This is not just something that if you are on the right, you are falling into these traps around moralizing, whether it is video games or social media or whatever technology, that this is something that we see across the board. Like there are lots of liberal parents, like the ones in my mother's community, who are panicking around panicking after having seen a show like Adolescence, after learning about the manosphere, where they're then buying into this belief that, well, we need to take social media and phones away from kids.
But you're conflating a few, like there's a lot that's being conflated here, right? So the moral panic is around kids' social media use.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually not a concern as much about them being radicalized. It's mostly around mental health. Again, we actually know quite a bit of we know why we have the quote youth mental health crisis in America. Our entire economic system has failed young people. Young people are growing up in a world that is significantly there's less opportunity for them. They're
Mm-hmm.
going to make less than their parents. 1 in 6 children are growing up below the poverty line. I have multiple episodes about this on my podcast, actually, where I talk to an actual researcher who studies this topic and wrote a book on it and has studied it for almost 2 decades and can tell you, she really breaks down like why what is actually causing these problems, because there's a lot of systemic problems in America. School shootings also, like, I mean, all of these things, right? Like kids can walk into school and get shot up at any day, but that's never talked about when we talked about the youth mental health crisis. Like
Mm-hmm.
all of these things, the kid, the fact that millions of kids lost their primary caregiver, have lost since COVID started. Millions of children, I think it was like 8 million in 2022, have lost their primary caregiver to COVID since the pandemic began and continue to lose primary caregivers.
Mm-hmm.
They're continuing to lose them to COVID again, because they just want to force everyone back to work, and they're not caring about that is such a significant effect on a child's mental health that will change them forever. Having a parent die, having a loved one die, having a caregiver die. And yet it's not even acknowledged. So there's so many factors, and we don't have to run through all of them, but the idea that it's cell phones and access to the internet and technology that is destroying these kids is just complete BS. And
Mm-hmm.
The goal of all of this, and the reason the Heritage Foundation and all these people are the ones pushing it, because they're pushing it to liberal parents and liberal people. They want to launder these moral panics through liberals to mainstream them. Is because they want to keep kids off the internet, because they're learning about things like gender ideology. Marsha Blackburn, co-sponsor of
Yeah,
COSA, the Kids Online
I've
Safety
talked
Act.
about her and
Yeah,
this bill.
Well, she admitted, she said it's to keep the transgender
Yes.
out of society. And that's what, by the way, like all of these laws are all about. That's what age verification is about. Age verification is not about making sure that young people don't use the internet. It's about it's about scanning because you can't just verify children's ages. You have to verify everyone's
Right,
age.
which just opens up to even more privacy
It's
violations,
about
surveillance.
that's what it's about. It's about tying offline your offline
Mm-hmm.
identity to your online behavior, which currently we don't have that. So they want to use that to target activists. And
Mm-hmm.
Biden, by the way, Biden was a huge proponent of this. The Democrats are just as bad at liberals because ultimately it's all about dismantling free speech and civil liberties.
Yeah, the reason I keep trying to tie this into adolescence, this show, I mean not just this show, but like the issues that we've been talking around it is because there are legitimate concerns here, but I'm trying to get at like how do we recognize what are real issues versus what are not good solutions to them, and how obviously everyone would say like, yeah, we need reform for social media platforms. Like, I think that's a very reasonable thing, that like there are dangerous things online, but it's like
And
going
what do they
from
mean by
that.
reform? What do they mean by reform of social media platforms? What do they mean? Because they certainly don't mean comprehensive data privacy reform,
Right.
which
Well,
is what
well,
would
yes.
actually
Like
hold these
real,
platforms
real
accountable.
reform versus reform that only benefits these social media platforms,
Banning TikTok, that's
gives
what they
more
consider
power
reform.
to the individual billionaires who, like an Elon Musk, where Elon Musk should not be in charge of reforming Twitter. Like, that is not a guy that you can trust. That is not a guy who has people's best interests at heart. Of course not. Like, the purpose of these tech platforms is obviously to make as much money for the for the tech billionaires who own them, but also for someone like Elon Musk to push his to push his ideology, to push what
But I
he
just
wants.
I just want to like make sure though, because you're starting to say things that actually people use to feed this moral panic, which is like, I agree with you, right?
Mm-hmm.
These are terrible, evil, capitalistic tech platforms. Unfortunately, because we have a duopoly again with Meta and Google primarily, and I know Musk is like doing his thing with X and it's relevant in politics, but to the mass culture, most people don't use X. Most people use TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. Well, TikTok might be banned again, but these more mainstream social platforms. Um, just because they're capitalistic and bad doesn't mean that we should ban them. Right now, these are the
I don't
ways
think
that
so.
no, I know, but I know you're not saying that, but I'm
No.
saying like this is what people say.
Mm-hmm.
The like leftist argument that people constantly make, which is not a leftist argument, by the way, it's like really bad. It's about suppressing speech. Is like, well, we should just ban these apps because they're evil and they're greedy and they're looking out for shareholders. It's like, yeah, you're right. But that doesn't mean that we should restrict that, basically dismantle people's primary these places where speech is happening and where you know activist
Mm-hmm.
movements are happening and where people are actually congregating and getting information. Like we want that. We just want less profit driven platforms. That's the goal. So the goal is not to like dismantle the whole social media thing. I would love, I mean, even if you eliminated Facebook, right? That'd be great. The point is we want social media. We want the internet. We want to be connected. We want a connected world where we can get access to information that's free and open. We don't want these platforms controlling speech, right? Like, I mean, I would
No.
love if we didn't have it, but that doesn't mean like throwing the baby out with the bathwater, I guess. Like, it doesn't mean like getting rid of social media. And that's where I think a lot of this stuff goes. It's like people are like, well, let's just like ban Facebook and restrict this without noting that there are no alternatives because Facebook has driven everyone out of business.
Well, I think what's being lost is the nuance though in this conversation, where what I'm trying to explain is like reasonable people recognize that, yeah, social media is not perfect, that there are issues with the internet. It's not like it's basically being like, how do you recognize the dangers of something like the manosphere, how much alt-right content dominates in these online spaces without leading people down this path that is very moral panicky and results in legislation that's supported across the political spectrum of really, really awful things like taking the internet away from kids.
So let's just be clear, like why we're seeing a rise of right-wing extremism.
Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people are blaming it on social media because that's where they see it.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not arguing that kids don't get radicalized online. Ironically, it's not really through social media. It's through like, it usually starts with like Discord, start chatting with your friends, going on a forum. Like you're not, sometimes it's through social media, but there's a lot of like the internet that is radicalized, like those more extreme spaces that actually aren't like that conversation is not happening on YouTube and Instagram and all that stuff as much now, thankfully, because they've like fixed some of it. Although I don't know, now it's free speech on Meta for right wing ideas. But what we want to recognize is that extremism is rising because of massive sociological oh my god, sociological factor.
Sociological. Yeah.
I like have my tongue twisted. Record wealth inequality.
Mm-hmm.
Again,
Yes. Yes.
lack of opportunity, advancement in women. I mean, part of this is so much of this is just tied to misogyny and culture, right? And you can take away the internet all you want. It's like that would actually hurt the women's movement. That would hurt feminism, I think.
Yeah.
Like, we don't just because people are learning about misogynistic stuff online that doesn't we need to counter that, but like we don't
Mm-hmm.
need to like eliminate the internet because of it, which has been so liberatory for women. Um, and LGBTQ people. I mean, the internet is a lifeline. Social media is
No,
a
I
lifeline for
totally
LGBTQ.
recognize that, and I talk about that all the time too. That
Yeah.
the internet is it's a place that has provided a lot of good for a lot of marginalized people. And the reality is that if you take these kids' smartphones away, if you uh like
Wait,
if
can I
you
say
restrict,
something actually about that?
yep,
You take the kid's smartphone away, they don't learn media literacy.
right,
Every single
yes,
expert, every single educational expert that studies this sort of extremism and stuff says you have to expose the kid to the internet early. You want them using social media early and young and learning how to operate in, navigate the information ecosystem of their time. You want them learning media literacy. You want them to determine what's fact from fiction and expose them to that again in
yeah,
a controlled environment because they're a child as young as possible, actually. You want them to understand these things because if you ban kids from the internet until they're 16 or 18, which is what people like Jonathan Haidt, Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and these right wingers at the Heritage Foundation want to do, um, you keep them ignorant. And by the way, that's the point. As Marsha Blackburn said, you keep them ignorant to the point that then they become 18. They're thrown into the world, which is an entirely internet enabled world. They can't find a job because they don't understand how to navigate the internet. They're more likely to be exploited. They can't understand the truth. They're falling for misinformation left and right. They're going down the radicalization pipeline because, again, they've been sheltered throughout their entire life and they don't have any idea how to navigate our information ecosystem.
yeah. I think what we need to be looking at is not this idea that okay, so for example, that misogyny and sexism is something that is an entirely new phenomenon in the adolescent, young boys. Like this is not something that has just suddenly come out of nowhere because of social media, and it's getting to like root issues, and it's getting to rather than the solution be restrict, which we know has never been that's never a viable solution to like restrict the youth from I mean, you look at Dare, okay? You look at the fucking Dare program. What a waste of billions of dollars. Don't do drugs, kids. It did absolutely nothing that they like promised parents and community members that it was going to do. And instead, the internet, which is such a huge part of our lives, a huge part of kids' lives, it is important to teach people, both adults and children, things like digital media literacy. Like that's the thing too, is like these adults who are posting crazy memes on Facebook when they've, had a couple glasses of wine and they're just popping off on Facebook. And how kind of the hypocrisy and being like, oh, no, it's the kids who are susceptible to misinformation, disinformation online. We need to take it away from them. But what about these adults who actually are behind a lot of spreading of misinformation, who, unlike kids, are at an age where they are voting, where they do have they do have more power over the youth. And this idea that only kids are susceptible to fake news online and not adults is crazy. Like, digital media literacy is something that should be taught in schools. And I think I think that just schools, we have to be examining how schools and other institutions are failing these kids. Like, they're underfunded, under-resourced. They just are not, because a lot of the adults at these schools, teachers, etc., they themselves don't really understand the internet. They don't understand how to approach something like, okay, maybe a couple boys in class are passing around an Andrew Tate video, and their instinct is going to be, okay, well, we need to take this away. We need to remove that because that's the way to address this problem, rather than offering kids an alternative and teaching them how to source for themselves when something is harmful misinformation.
Yeah. And also just like, I mean, as you mentioned, most teachers and unfortunately school administrators, they fall for misinformation all the time. They're the ones believing Jonathan Haidt's bullshit. Like, they don't know fact from fiction at all. And they want to, like, again, it's just this regressive ideology of like remove people's access to information, because that's really what the internet is. The internet is sort of a people connector, and it allows for access to information, just the way that books allowed for access to information, and people wanted to take those away as well. And the argument is like, well, let's keep kids ignorant, protect their innocence, and it's like, no, guys, once again, the internet is not going places. So you want to exactly see what they're watching, teach them, respond, say, hey, what do you notice about that video? What is it saying? Like, let's have a talk, like, let's have a discussion about it. Here's how to navigate these spaces. Here's how to realize this. Like, they have to learn these skills early. Otherwise, they're wholly unprepared and they're going to be ignorant adults.
Yeah.
And again, that's the goal, is to keep people ignorant, especially of things like gender stuff.
I think it's boomers who are the age group most likely to share misinformation online. You look at the fact that, like, these are people who were the oldest. This is the oldest age group when the internet became popularized, where just common sense tells you that had they been exposed to the internet at an earlier age, had they been taught that, taught to decipher false and true information, that then they would not be the number one age group that is susceptible to misinformation online and like sharing that. I mean, I'm on email chains and get Facebook posts. I'm not even on Facebook, and I will get Facebook posts sent to me from family members who are over the age of 65, and it's just crazy stuff. Like, that's who's usually sending me.
But it's also people our age and younger.
No, I'm not saying it's not. I'm just looking at, like, if you're making the argument that kids are the problem online and they're the ones susceptible, we need to take it away from them. Well, look at the fact that, like, the age group that is actually most susceptible, everybody is susceptible. Everybody, every age group is susceptible.
No, but boomers are sharing Facebook AI slop. And,
yes, exactly. Where it's like, maybe if we address this problem at a, for people at a young age, where we give them the tools to navigate online, to navigate safely, to be able to decipher what is AI slop and what is, something that's actually real, that then they will be prepared going forward as we continue to technologically advance as well. Like, we live in a technological age, and AI is only becoming more effective. It's being used in political campaigns. it's being used as, it's digital abuse online. And so I think these are things, I totally agree with you that like kids they need to know they need to be taught how to safely navigate these online spaces rather than having it ripped away.
It's also, you have to understand that this is where children connect. This is their social life. The younger you are, the more likely your entire social life is integrated with the internet. Young people today are more likely to have friends outside their immediate area. They're likely to have close connections that aren't their immediate family members. This is where people are socializing and connecting and bonding and, learning about themselves, especially marginalized kids, poor kids,
Mm-hmm.
kids of color, LGBTQ youth. I mean, often sometimes these are like they'll be the only non-binary kid, in their town or whatever. So they go to the internet, they bond over the internet. Young women, the internet has been a lifeline for so many young women. So again, this is how people socialize. And when you shame young people for saying this, oh, it's rotting your brain, it's doing all these things, when they're on their phone connecting with people that they love, it gives them this really mixed messaging. And the media plays such a major role in all of this. And specifically, the New York Times, the Atlantic, I mean, they're all so guilty, but the New York Times and the Atlantic, I would say, are two of the worst offenders of pushing this sort of
Well,
moral
and
panic
this
crap.
is also what's read by a lot of they have a lot of liberal
Well, so
readers.
yes. So Tyler Austin Harper, who is a liberal writer at the Atlantic, posted just on 2 days ago, quote, smartphones. Well, he's quote tweeting Sarah Huckabee Sanders saying a year ago, Jonathan Haidt fueled a national movement. Since then, Arkansas banned cell phones in schools. Da, 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 da. She goes around saying all these terrible policies. Tyler Austin Harper quote tweets her and said, smartphones are the one issue where I genuinely don't care what the studies do or don't say. Call me intellectual all you want, but I refuse to believe we need studies to tell us the phones are rotting everyone's brains. We all know they are, and they have no place in schools. Insane.
Yeah,
And this is a liberal,
that's
and it's
incredibly
liberals agreeing
irresponsible
with him.
too as a journalist to be like, doesn't matter what the studies say, doesn't matter that there is not this correlation that they're making here between
Doesn't matter
usage
that
of
that
social media and mental health issues.
and phones in schools,
Yeah.
especially, you know who that hurts. It doesn't hurt the rich kids that have laptops in schools. For poor children, and I had an educator on who runs a school board recently on my podcast, but kids, you think, oh, why should kids have phones in schools? First of all, school shootings. Parents want to be able to get in touch with their kids. School shooting, like cell phones have saved countless children's lives because of school shootings. Second of all, a lot of young people, that is their only calculator. That is their only word processor. That is how they take notes. That is how they consume information. They're taking pictures of slides. They're using the phone as part of their learning tools. So yes, you don't want your kid playing video games all day, during class, just the way that you don't want laptops in class. But think how crazy you sound if you say, we need to get laptops out of schools. No more using word processing technology in schools. It's rotting kids' brains. No, you sound insane.
Mm-hmm.
You need these tools to learn, to teach people. Same thing with the phone. You want to teach children to learn
Like,
to use this technology responsibly.
I remember when I was in 7th grade, I had my first computer class where we learned how to use a computer, blah, 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 blah. So somebody in chat was like, well, how do you even teach kids how to, how to navigate online when adults themselves don't know how to do that? In the same way that in my school, we had these tech classes where you need to have, and obviously this, like a lot of these schools are so under-resourced, underfunded. So like this is a problem, but you have experts in who are teaching these types of classes in the way that we had someone there who was teaching us how to use a computer. Like we had typing class. We had, here's how you use word processing. Like this was still in the early days. Like this was before YouTube and everything. But that's one way, is like you literally have educational classes in schools that teach kids who now know how to use the internet, right? Like you don't have to teach them how to get online and type. They know how to do that. You have kindergartners who know how to work iPads better than adults do, but now it's teaching them things like digital media literacy. So, okay. I want to ask you about, because you've also written a lot about the manosphere. And the reason that I keep bringing up these points too is because I do think that you can start off on the right track and be like, yeah, the manosphere, that's bad. Andrew Tate, like these are bad content creators. Like, just how many of them are online and how rewarded algorithmically right-wing reactionary content is. Like, these are things that are true, but I'm trying to I'm trying to keep us then from going down the wrong path, the path that whatever internet related issue it is then results in, okay, well, we need to ban smartphones for kids and we need to ban social media for kids. So it's like, okay, reckoning with
That's going to make them more misogynistic. You're just feeding them. That's why the right, like, if you think that the right, and people like the Heritage Foundation are banning, they want to keep kids off the internet so that they're less radicalized to the right, you're an idiot. Like, I'm sorry. I just like, please use your brain, because the point that so much of right wing radicalization is keeping people ignorant, right? It's keeping people ignorant of the reality of LGBTQ people and life, right? And it's sort of like it's keeping them dumb and stupid and only feeding them a steady stream of, right wing garbage. So, I'm definitely not arguing that some of these spaces online are like exacerbating the problem of misogyny. But we have this reactionary, misogynistic, hateful ideology that's prevalent right now in America, not because of the internet. We see it because of it. We see it on the internet. It's reflected. The internet is just a mirror that reflects our culture back to us. But it's exacerbated by platforms like Twitter. Like, I'm not arguing that some of these right-wing billionaires don't manipulate their platforms to push really evil shit, but you can't. You could delete the platforms tomorrow, and we still have the big systemic problems that are ultimately leading to these issues, and that is extremism. Like, and it's inequality. It's decades of neoliberalism that have hollowed out opportunity for young people, for marginalized people, for this entire generation, basically everyone 40 and below. Like, so there's all of these other big problems. Also, the advancement of women has been, this is like where you hear all this stuff about like the male loneliness epidemic and all this shit that, like, of course, women have,
no,
been lonely for years.
Women aren't
but it's
lonely.
like, but
no,
so
women are all thriving.
I know, like, well, yeah.
Now we're good.
But a lot of it's the media, traditional media, mainstream media, because mainstream media is completely mainstream media. People, the entire mainstream media would love to shut down the internet. They would love to not compete with social media. They would love to ban everyone from their smartphone and force you to like subscribe to their stupid newspaper to keep them in business. Like, they want to keep people, they want a world that is the 90s, where it was a top-down information ecosystem. And you had gatekeepers who controlled access to information and speech. And that's why actually both parties are aligned on this. It's like the same way that they're both aligned on arresting college protesters or banning masks.
Yeah.
Like, they want control, and they want to control access to information. They want to control political speech. They want to control dissent. And we should not cede those powers lightly. Yes, the internet is currently dominated by a lot of evil tech billionaires, and I think they should. Yes, I agree with regulation. I agree with if it's smart regulation, and I agree with like all trying to build alternative platforms. But yeah, it's anyway. That's the bigger problem is the right wing extremism, which is due to all this systemic stuff.
Yeah,
and the Democrats being dumb, and by the way, like pursuing unpopular policies for decades. And
it's what's difficult is we talk a lot about how to counter these really dominant right-wing narratives in traditional media online. Like, it doesn't matter if it's a left-leaning publication, which, let's be real, CNN is not left-leaning, the New York Times is not left-leaning, but how so much of the mainstream media is pushing very right-wing narratives. Like, you look at everything around immigration and crime, which are also, these are moral panics, right? These are stories that are pushed to a mass audience to elicit their fears, to make them have an emotional response that denies logic and like actual facts. And so we talk about like, how do we counter this? But it is a challenge for those on the left because you have to counter the misinformation and then offer an alternative. The alternative being addressing people's real, economic concerns. It's like, do you think that if we had universal healthcare, that you would have all of these people like spending this much time being angry about the latest thing in the culture war? Like, do you think that if having something like universal healthcare would alleviate so many of their day-to-day concerns, of housing that is affordable, not being job insecure, not seeing their wages stagnate, which this has an effect on kids when they feel the stresses of their families, okay? Parents who are not there to mentor, to be role models to kids, who then it might push them towards figures who are harmful. Like, this all is coming from worsening material conditions, which if you're on the right, you're not talking about that kind of shit. You're addressing people's insecurities from that, but not identifying that that's what it is, and instead pointing to like gay people and women being like, that's why you are feeling the way that you feel, and that's why your life sucks. So I guess I want you to talk about like, what are actual effective ways to counter reactionary dominance in the media and in I don't know, online spaces.
I think one important thing is to not be this type of, like, this guy, like Tyler, whatever his name is, from The Atlantic. Like, don't seed these narratives.
Mm-hmm.
Don't say this type of stuff. Oh yeah, the social media is rotting my brain. Blah, blah, blah. Again, yes, we can acknowledge that sort of like the predatory nature of these big tech platforms, while also recognizing that they're lifelines for so many marginalized people and so crucial to speech and activism. And we shouldn't cede those spaces by becoming more offline or, like intentionally kind of like removing ourselves from it. And I do see a lot of people doing that, where they're like, there's this like log off movement. You know who's not logging off? Right-wing extremists. And that doesn't mean that you need to be glued to Twitter all day fighting with them or something.
Right.
But just like recognize that they're selling you a lie. They are lying to you. Because let me tell you, the same people that are trying to ban you from using the internet and keep kids off social media and keep young gay people from not learning the word non-binary, whatever, like, they're the most online people ever. Jonathan Haidt cannot stop posting online.
Mm-hmm.
This man tweets every 2 seconds. He's doing his Instagram. He is posting 24/7. And again, selling nonsense. So it's so important that people recognize the power of the internet and recognize it is the most liberatory force that we have ever seen in our lifetime, and probably in the past several centuries, right? Like, it's like printing press levels of seismic change in terms of our access to information. And so we want to build a better internet. We want a less profit-driven internet. We want, all of those things, but we also want to retain free speech and free access to information. And that's what's under threat with this moral panic around kids.
Mm-hmm.
Because when you really dig down to it, that's what it is. It's about keeping kids
ignorant. we love to keep the kids safe. We got to
Right.
protect the children. It's amazing that every time you look historically, these movements to keep kids safe, to save kids, it is all around this very right-wing driven moral panic, right? Keeping kids safe from gay people, from trans people.
Well, the whole comic book thing was because Frederick Wortham said that Batman and Robin were gay.
Yeah.
And there was coded messages in it. Seriously, it's always the same. It's always the same with these people.
Goddamn, these gay superheroes, they're just all over the place. It's like when I was just talking about this yesterday, one of my first memories of like the go woke go broke in Disney live actions was when Disney was marketing that they were gonna have a gay character, that what's his name in Beauty and the Beast was gonna be gay, and then it really was. It was like 1 second in the film of him dance LeFou dancing with a man. It was the most ambiguously gay thing I've ever seen. But that was one of my, as far back as I can remember, like around what is now just this very obnoxious, dominant go woke go broke every time a live action film comes out, and especially if you have like a young performer of color like Rachel Zegler, what she's going through right now. Wait, what was I talking about? I got
Okay, I just want to say one other thing too. I don't know, just in relation to what you're saying, like it's every time we see progress, like TikTok is a good example of this. TikTok was the only platform that where news content creators actually skewed progressive.
yes.
One content platform that did that. The only social platform that skewed progressive. And how did they get it banned? They didn't get it banned by acknowledging, hey, there's a lot of student activism on here that we want to shut down. People are talking about Palestine. They created a moral panic and they
Yeah.
convinced people that TikTok is quote unquote rotting their brains and that making kids do all these challenges that are completely made up, that don't exist, of course. And by pushing this reactionary thing and of course claiming nonsense about China and data, which they don't give a shit about because China can buy as much data as they want from third-party Facebook brokers. Okay, we have no data privacy, so it was never about China and data. It was about Israel. And by the way, Gallagher, the co-sponsor of the bill, literally admitted that.
If anyone's going to be selling your data, it's going to be me. Like that was the American. It's like, we're not going to have China doing it's us. Okay. This is American.
Yeah, we are going to exploit and abuse
yes.
our consumers.
American exploitation.
But it's like it would not have happened. The reason so many parents support the TikTok ban is because they believe that it is, poisoning the minds of children and it's making them do these crazy things. Again, and you saw liberals laundering this through the media. And so I really think we need to fight back against these narratives and talk about it.
Oh, I know. I mean, that's why I brought up this community meeting my mother is organizing, because these are liberals. This is like your quintessential moderate Democrat, liberal community suburb who voted for Kamala Harris, don't understand what's going on with all these internet terms that they're learning about, falling prey, being vulnerable to in believing that the solution here is that we have to take the phones away and that will fix the mental health crisis, that will keep young boys from being misogynistic, that it's like you take their phone away and all that goes away as if it hasn't existed forever.
As if there was no misogyny before phones, as if we didn't have the most rank misogyny.
And the real
60
truth
years
is
ago.
that most of the misogyny online comes from adult men.
Mm-hmm.
That is right. Yeah. Where it's like, okay, we look at boomers sharing AI slop Facebook memes. You have adult men who are behind a lot of the misogynistic drivel online, and yet it's the kids who we have to take the internet away from.
And they also don't want young people to have a platform. Like this just goes back to like the TikTok ban and these child influencer laws. They don't want young people expressing. Finally, young people are having a bigger and bigger voice in our political system through platforms like, TikTok, X, whatever, Instagram. They can make their voices heard. We see things like the March for Our Lives movement. We see things like, the student protests with Gaza, all of this stuff, largely facilitated through social media, right? Now that young people, especially progressive young people, are using the internet to espouse more ideas, and so many young people have platforms. Again, this goes back to like why they banned TikTok. It's to take away those political platforms by so many of these young activists. That's what this is all about. And so when you see these laws, by the way, about like protecting child influencers, they don't want to protect child influence. They don't give a shit. Sarah Huckabee Sanders, the same person who's talking about protecting children, is also rolling back child labor laws. Okay. They don't care about like some 7-year-old working on a vlog channel. What
We
they
got
want
to
to
keep
do,
kids from the vlogs, but put them in the mines.
well, literally, what they want to do is they want to pass these regressive laws that have terrible implications. I mean, this influencer laws are some of the most dangerous things I've seen in terms of speech because they set this precedent for mandatory content takedown, where when you can mandate that other people take down lawful speech. We don't have that right now in America, like the EU does, and so anyway, they're trying to sort of build these legal precedents to dismantle speech and to make it hard for young people to have a platform and to build a platform when they're teenagers. And so many teen activists have built platforms, powerful platforms, climate activists, et cetera, using social media. And what these bills do is they treat every single young person below the age of 18 as like a victim, because they're all victimized on the child influencer channels. Never mind that. No, they're not. Like that's just a myth. That whole moral panic is ridiculous. And I can tell you this as somebody that's covered multiple generations of kids that have grown up on family blogs and family vlogs. What are you talking about? 99.9% of these kids are fine and in fact participated in it and are happy. Like yes, there's a problem with parents oversharing their young children.
Yeah.
That actually has nothing to do with influencers at all. Like the vast majority of parents doing that are not influencers. So yes, we should change norms around, what you're sharing of your young child online. Sure, those are norms
Yeah.
to change. But that's not what these laws do. These
Yeah.
laws don't protect children from any of that.
How do you like I think in the past I looked at these laws, which it's still pretty new legislative territory. I looked at them and I was like, I do think that kids should get paid
They
for.
do. They do. Like we have child labor laws. We have the Coogan Act. We have actually quite a bit of legal precedent around this stuff.
Okay.
So, but if you want to ensure a child gets, and I'm all for more protections, by the way, around like payments, the way to do that is not to make the allegedly abusive parent then in charge of the child's trust and
Oh,
give them
right,
even more
right. I do
financial
think
control,
that's a
which is what these
problem.
laws do, just to
Yeah.
be clear. These laws give even more financial control. So it's like they're passed under the pretense that the parent is abusive, but then you're giving the parent even more financial control over the child. Make it make sense. Again, abusive parents should be prosecuted, like the Ruby
Mhm.
Frankie case, whatever. Like that's horrible. We didn't need an influencer law to prosecute that child abuse, right? She was
Right.
sentenced to 4 counts of child abuse, 1 to 15 years in prison. We didn't need any laws to do that. We should continue to prosecute child abuse. But what about all of these Facebook groups where adoptive parents are going and venting about their adopted children, saying the most horrible shit about their children, saying stuff that makes it even harder to rehome those children, sometimes stigmatizing them with mental health issues that they probably don't even have, pathologizing these adopted kids. Terrible, terrible things that exist, right? None of those answers.
Oh
Oh,
wait, will you say that again? I think you cut out.
wait, hold on a second. Let me fix it. Um, Always knocking on me. Hear me even?
I can hear you.
Oh, okay. I was just saying, none of those parents are influencers. Like the parents oversharing about their kids online. Again, I am all for protecting kids'
Yeah.
privacy. If we really want to protect kids' privacy, guess what? Family vloggers are the least of our problems. Okay, there's like a couple thousand family vloggers, like whatever. And most of them are completely fine. Um, Children from the time before they're even born. There's that
Their
amazing New York
digital
Times story.
footprint. Yeah.
Their
Yes.
digital footprint is being collected and built by data brokers.
Yes.
That digital footprint is then used to discriminate against people, to deny them healthcare, to calculate things like recidivism if they get sent to juvenile detention when they're 16. Like all of this, that's what we should be. That's the real harm to children. And by the way, the vast amount of data children, if you do these age verification laws, which require collecting even more data on children, and same thing with these influencer laws, they require collecting even more data on children, um, which is why a lot of the tech platforms are not fighting them so much. You create even more risk for that child, for the children. Shoshana at this, I forgot her last name. She did this great takedown on like why these are so bad in terms of like data privacy, but that kid is more likely to be a victim of identity theft. That kid is more likely to like suffer all of these harms. And none of that's in the conversation because people just want to shame some mom on TikTok. And yes, there's a lot of bad parents out there. Welcome to America. Unfortunately,
Yeah.
unfortunately, it's not illegal to be a bad parent.
Yeah.
It's just not. We should have better norms. We should encourage parents to be better parents. There's just a lot of bad parents out there, and you're going to see them on the internet. But this idea of like, well, let's run to the government and let them pass censorship laws. And then I can go on TikTok and say, yay, they passed an influencer law and it's protecting children. What are you talking about? First of all, that law has endangered children. It set a precedent to restrict free speech, and it mandates that the tech companies and all these people collect more data.
Mm-hmm.
And you're cheering for it, and it's done nothing. And by the way, it's not protecting any kids from abuse. It drives me insane. I could lose. I'm losing. I've
What?
literally been up for like 3 days straight over this topic because the headlines of this like story are making me like lose my mind.
So basically, okay, when uh, what you're saying is like Ruby Frankie and these other terrible abusive. I mean, she's obviously like on the extreme end, but
Yeah.
there seem to be, even though there's not that many family vloggers, there is an economy around it that's grown because content in
Yeah.
general has just grown, right? It's a way for normal people to maybe make some money without yeah, I mean the barrier of entry is pretty low. Everybody has access to the
It's mostly
internet.
women. It's
Everyone,
women without, it's actually women stuck at
yeah.
home, often in regressive religions like Mormonism and or Christianity, say what you will about those religions, but a lot of these women are stuck at home with a lot of children without access to economic opportunities. So they turn to the internet
Mm-hmm.
and they go to monetize. And again, I just want to be also something that people constantly miss in these conversations. Mommy bloggers and parenting vloggers are not the ones putting the majority of content about kids online. The vast, 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 vast majority, 99.9% of underage kids' content online is not parents putting children online. It is kids putting themselves online. It is kids between the ages of 13 to 18, majority, but kids get online at, they sign up for social media as young as they can, putting themselves online. I did this story years ago, back I think it was 2018 at The Atlantic, where I interviewed dozens of children about the first time that they Googled themselves. Caroline, some of those kids were horrified by what they
Oh,
found. Like one kid like found like a hashtag that like his entire family had been using to post pictures of him for years with his there was a
yeah.
hashtag of his name. And that was totally embarrassing, right? Like that's the type of thing that we should like normalize not doing, like
Yeah.
make a private album, right? But a significant amount of kids that I talked to, and this was back in 2018, were upset that there wasn't more about themselves online. They felt like they didn't feel like they had because being a person in the world is so tied to the internet and tied to online identity. They didn't feel a sense of agency. They wanted more of themselves online so that they, quote, felt like a person. They wanted to feel agency. They wanted to feel like they exist in the world. And the
Huh.
internet to young people is
Yeah.
default reality. So it's just, you have to recognize that these are kids that are putting themselves online, which by the way is not a bad thing. We want kids to express themselves. We want kids to make their voices heard. A lot of these kids are the ones out there doing climate activism, out there espousing things. Like we want to do it we want parent supervision.
Mm-hmm.
Parents aren't bad parents, but this idea that like, oh my God, parents are just putting their kids online. That's not an influencer problem. That's a privacy norms problem.
Yeah. Where it's not just kids whose data is being mined and exploited. It's like everybody. Yeah.
The main girl that continues to testify at these influencer hearings, and I've interviewed her, and I'm not, she's been through a horrible thing. Her mother for
What's
years,
Wait, what's her name? Because I want to know if, I mean, you don't have to say it, but I'm just
it's
wondering if it's
it's
in.
Cammy, it's Cammy. Um, she's done,
Okay.
and I don't, I
She's.
really like, I don't want to seem like I'm coming for her here because she's been through a horrible situation. She's
Mm-hmm.
quoted in like almost every story about this stuff.
Yeah.
She testified, I think, in Michigan and some other, even maybe Washington. She's testified in a few of these hearings. What she went through is horrible. But her mom was not an influencer. Her mom overshared about her. Her mom has serious mental health issues and overshared about her every single detail of her life on Facebook for years, in a way that was really invasive and ultimately traumatizing. And her mother traumatized her in so many other ways. That's terrible. Again, that is abuse. If you are abusing your child, we already have so many laws around child abuse, and we should put even more laws, to protect children in abusive situations. But that mom was not an influencer. And it's really actually hard to find kids. There's a few high profile examples because they get endless media
Mm-hmm.
attention. But what you're not going to hear is the vast majority of kids that just grow up and are totally normal.
Yeah. I mean, I think
And by the way,
obviously when something.
have good communication with their parents
Yeah.
because that's what it's about.
when something gets outsized attention, which a family vlogger situation like Ruby Frankie's got a ton of media attention, and it's horrifying, and like it is obviously child abuse. But so like rather than legislation, how do we educate and inform people about like fixing the norms, you know? Because there are like for people who their parents share things about them online that they don't want to, where like they
And
have the
kids share
agency to
about
share it,
their
but like they should be allowed to post, just like people getting to be in control of like what they're posting about their lives versus
But it
like from
goes back
when
to speech, right? If your mom is out saying terrible stuff about you all day long, you have a terrible mother. And we should normalize saying, like, hey, stop shit talking your child. Hey, stop doing all of this harm to your child. Like, I agree with things like protections, privacy protections, data privacy protections, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah.
those things would protect children and way more than any of these other bills. We should encourage parents, which we've already seen a lot of this, like, hey, put an emoji over your kid's face.
Yes,
Facial recognition is
I
a
will
major
say
thing, right?
I have seen more of that, because you're right. Like this isn't something that is just influencer parents are posting their children before they're at an age that they can like consent to stuff. I have so many friends who have children who nonstop post their children online, and they're not influencers, and so maybe in their minds they think too that there's no problems here. But it's like they post, I'm not trying to be not trying to be panicky or anything, but they post like naked photos of their kids on like in public, where I think about like my parents don't have social media. My parents never, when I was growing up, that wasn't a thing. But I do know that like if I had been a kid whose parents were posting stuff about me online, that it would feel like I didn't have any agency there. And
Well, but
that's one thing I want.
this
I
goes
was,
back to the fundamental sort of divide though, right?
mm-hmm.
Like this goes back, it loops back to conservatism. Conservatives and certain people, if you believe there's multiple schools of thought with children. Like you and I probably agree on this, and I think most people that get outraged about this stuff are like, hey, that's an autonomous person. That's a person that
Yeah.
like is their own human being that might have their own feelings. And actually they might be totally fine with you posting that, but they probably might not be totally fine with you posting that. And you should consider that. That's not the belief that actually, ironically, the people writing these laws like are pushing. They believe that children are essentially your property. And until you
Right.
turn 18, that child is your property. And
Mm-hmm.
you can determine what information that child ingests, what beliefs they have.
Mm-hmm.
You can post them online if you want, because again, that's your property. And these are a lot of the same people that believe women are property as well, by the way. Like that's
Which we
the
are.
that's like the underlying belief system. So I think we need to change
Yeah.
norms around parenting, because let me tell you, it manifests like I think people see these differences in beliefs most notably online, and they're reacting to the oh my God, you're sharing your kid online. Da, da, da. That is just a symptom of this larger belief around parenting that is a very regressive belief around parenting
Yes.
that actually manifests all throughout that child's life in really terrible ways.
Yes. It's
So
you owe your parent respect because they are an adult, because they're a parent, but they don't need to respect you. Elon Musk is a person who exemplifies this through and through. And you're right that like you and I are people who believe that children deserve their autonomy, that we don't treat children as human beings. We do treat them as beings to be controlled, that they are not deserving of respect and autonomy because they are minors, because they are incapable of making their own decisions, of that's just it is a that it's not a new it's not that's not anything new, like the way that we view children versus adults. And that is something that I think we have to change. We have to culturally change the way that we do treat children, where like look at them as, first of all, deserving of their own autonomy, deserving of being treated like human beings, being treated with respect, And then also entrusting in them, if we provide them the tools, if we are there to give them the education and the guidance that they need, that then they can be making these decisions for themselves with whatever it is that they are seeing online or whatever it is that they're doing, even offline. That it's like, okay, so we understand this concept of teaching kids like, hey, stranger danger, even though that's, obviously it was like a moral panic thing too. But as far as like trying to teach kids, even though we fail a lot, like how to navigate the world offline. And so why don't we also look at that online, where this is the whole world, right? Online blends the public and the private, and it's where, kids very much so, we all very much so exist in these blending, in this blending of these worlds. And I really do believe that if we changed the way that we view and treat kids, that we could fix these problems better.
Well, we would have a lot of healthier kids
Yeah,
too. I mean, like
yeah.
emotionally healthy. It reminds me so much of like food. I mean, just as a woman, right? Like your food is always such a thing. And like I just remember like being at other people's parents' houses and seeing the way that their parents talk to them about, it's like, sit down, you will eat this, you will eat your dinner, da, da, da. And now we know like a lot of those things actually gave people eating disorders, gave people like, you want to empower the child to make their own, encourage them to eat healthy, but teach them to feed themselves in a healthy way. And that takes a little bit more effort than just sitting and yelling at them. And of course you have to, make your kid try their vegetables. It's hard. Like parenting is hard. I get it. Like, I was a step parent for a while. Like it's a hard thing.
Mm-hmm.
But you want to empower your child. You don't want to force feed your child, hey, you will eat what mom makes you every single night, da 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 da. Now you're 18, you can't cook for yourself. You don't understand nutrition. You don't, any like moderation. Now you're just gonna eat ice cream all the time because you never had access to it. Like you want to teach your kid to operate in the world. And so it's like this with everything. And I think digital, privacy and autonomy and all these things are the same. This is why I wouldn't personally post my child online, right? Like if I had a child, I also don't post strangers on the subway, right? Like
Right.
I
Yes.
recognize other
Yeah.
people's autonomy and consent. And that's what we need to be teaching is autonomy and consent. And ironically, these laws that claim to protect child influencers strip young people of autonomy. And they strip young people of being able to make their own choices about their online platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And that is harmful.
Also, we live in a surveillance state. We don't need to be fucking surveilling one another. Everyone's a
Yeah.
cop.
I know.
Everyone
It's
is a
like
cop.
all of it is so, I mean, that's like a whole other like
That
terrifying
I know
thing.
that's a whole other conversation, but
It goes back to like I think a lot of these beliefs where it's like, well, what do you believe? Do you believe in like there's a lot of people I think that very much view themselves as the main character and don't care about other people and don't have empathy for other people and don't recognize other people, especially poor people, unhoused people, mentally ill people, as autonomous people. It's the same way that a lot of people don't recognize children as autonomous, right? They're like, oh, look at this mentally ill, funny person on the subway. I'm going to record them.
yeah. 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 So, okay. There's a lot of writing. There's a lot of stuff online that's very much moral panicky, that is pushing pseudoscience, that's just or straight up denying science. What do you recommend? So I know you've written about this. I know you made a YouTube video about this. Is there anyone else? Like I read a piece in that Atlantic. Who was this by? Candace Odgers.
One of the most Candace Odgers, Alice Marwick, Dana Boyd. I mean, Candace and Alice are two of the best researchers on this topic. You could not find better research. I mean, they are like the top of the top in terms of people that actually study this topic. These are women. And I think it's really funny, by the way, that like women, when I go to write about these topics, almost all of the prominent researchers are women. And yet the people that are continually platformed are people like Jonathan Haidt that actually have zero experience and have never once published a research paper on this topic. So it's just kind of telling.
I think that is telling, yeah.
They're great. Mike Masnick at Tech Dirt. Okay, it's a tech policy blog. So someone needs to redo this website because they don't have like photos on it and stuff. It's
Okay.
techdirt.com. They actually have been doing some of the best coverage of all of this. They broke the story that the Heritage Foundation was lobbying for COSA. They've been
That's
covering
the
like,
Kids Online Safety Act, everyone.
yes. And they've been covering a lot of like the harmful ways that this legislation is going to be used to dismantle free speech. And it's actually a really great news source. And I know when you look at the website, you're gonna be like, was this designed in 1998? But Mike Masnick is like, he's one of the best tech journalists working today. He also has this great new podcast that he's doing with this like random like tech, like they're like a lobbying group. So it's like, but they just funded this podcast that he wanted to do forever, which is explaining Section 230 to people, which everyone should learn about because they're trying to dismantle it
We've
right now in
we've talked
Congress.
about this in on stream. Yeah. Do you want to
Yeah.
briefly just describe what it is?
Section 230 essentially makes it so that platforms don't, they're not like, if, for instance, if I write something defamatory about Caroline on Facebook, Caroline can sue me for defamation, but she can't hold Facebook
Right.
accountable. So the platforms are not responsible. They are responsible in the sense that they oversee. They don't want illegal speech, but they can't that you can't take down a platform for speech that they've hosted, which is crucial for any sort of activism, any sort of like social platform to exist. And of course, the right wants to dismantle this so
Well, I
that
think it
they
was
can.
Donald Trump who he first brought this up in his first president, right? Like I think
Yeah,
he first started mentioning this when he was president the first time around.
yeah. Yeah, Trump has wanted to take this away forever because again, this is part of this broader, all of these laws are part of this bigger effort to dismantle free speech protections in
Mm-hmm.
America,
Mm-hmm.
which is, I mean, this is the biggest issue of our time.
Yeah.
And my, like people and no one on the left seems to care. And I feel like I'm losing my mind. It's like a few leftists that are really involved in protest stuff have started to realize it. Like I think Gaza has opened a lot of people's eyes up to the fact that we've lost so many of our free speech rights. But another book I just want to recommend is David Enrich at the New York Times, who I used to work with, who's actually amazing. Like one of the best reporters there, has done so much reporting on these like evil corporate law firms, corporate accountability. He's like an investigative journalist. He wrote this book called Murder the Truth. It just came out. It's about the decades long conservative movement to dismantle New York Times v. Sullivan, which is the landmark Supreme Court case that protects our ability to have a free press.
Hmm.
And it's on the verge of being overturned potentially. So we want to learn about it. And this is a great book. It reads like a thriller. It's like not a boring book. It's really good.
Okay.
So it's
Guys,
called
I
Murder the
linked it.
Truth. I
I
read
linked
it
it
in a
right
day.
there. You read it in oh shit. Okay.
It's
You
really
read?
good.
Okay.
And there's a lot of drama and gossip in it because these people are messy and it's about like these conservatives. And then also I linked to you, but this Mike Masnick's podcast, if you want to
Yes,
understand
I
Section
posted that as
230,
well.
it's really good. It's a really good like primer on why we need to protect it and why leftists should care because there's no like leftist groups engaged in fighting this stuff. And that's
Mm-hmm. And
terrifying.
would you link together this panic over something like adolescence and the internet and the manosphere and all that, and like wanting to ban smartphones, take kids off social media, to the free speech issues that I think people recognize more with trying to deport green card and visa holders who
Let
have
me explain to
engaged in
you
protest.
these those laws about protecting children, that is the legal groundwork for doing that other stuff.
Yeah, and I think
That is
that's
the legal. Let,
important
let me
to
just tell you this.
recognize.
Let me just tell you what the influencer law this week, this Utah influencer law this week in Utah and Michigan, these child influencer laws. You know what they do for the first time ever? They create this legal pathway where lawful speech can be removed. Right now, you can't, if it's lawful speech online, like you can't just get it taken down by a platform. You can't just like legally. Now it's making it so that that a young person can turn 18 and sue. And how could that manifest? So you think, oh, well, that's great. The child can sue to take down all the mean mommies vlogs about them. No, you know how that's really going to manifest? Somebody is doing a local news, is covering protests and say there's a kid that's been at 30% or more of the protests that they've covered. And so their face is on screen.
Mm-hmm.
That person will then, usually it's an interest group behind them, could potentially sue to get all of that local news footage removed. Because guess who's in the majority of minor content on the internet? It's news footage. It's a lot of news footage. It's a lot of local news footage. And how can you possibly cover? I mean, I was talking to journalist outlets on YouTube, local news about this law yesterday. they don't want to cover a student protest because another thing that this law mandates, this child influence law, is that you have to keep detailed records of any single minor that appears in your content. And once they become a qualified minor, you need to tell their parents, that you've documented them and all this stuff, which requires basically, it gets back to the age verification, which means verifying the identities and ages of everyone in your videos. So you can't cover a student protest for Gaza, for instance, because you don't know if there might be minors there. You can't cover a protest movement because there might be minors there. And then suddenly you're legally liable because you haven't been keeping track of them. And you have to keep track of them now, and they might get this content removed.
And it just leads to suppression
and that's how it's going to be used. Just to be clear, this law is not going to be used to protect child influencers. They don't give a shit about child influencers. Again, they're sending kids to the mines. They want, like, literally, Sarah Huckabee Sanders is like,
No, I know.
or meat factories rather,
I
right?
know.
Like that's what they're like, oh, let the 12-year-olds, gut a cow.
Good for
That
them.
is that is what these legal efforts, that is the goal of these legal efforts. Same thing with age verification. The goal is to tie your offline. The goal is to use this stuff against activism. And these people are so stupid that they're feeding into it and allowing these legal precedents to be established that are then used. And we know how they're used. We've seen this has been decades.
And you look at the way it's framed in the Atlantic and the New York Times, and how then because of that framing, people aren't really understanding how these laws at their core will be used, because I think that's what it is. It's presented as like, here's this big scary issue, and this is what the law is designed to protect against. And everyone wants to protect kids, right? Isn't that, you don't want to protect children? What's wrong with you?
How could you say no?
But
Yeah.
but it's like, if you just dip even one toe below the surface of how this is being framed, to understand how these laws are going to be used. Like, I do think that's something that I haven't seen enough people talking about, writing about. Like, the people who were leading the charge against the Kids Online Safety Act, they were teen activists. Like, that's who when I was
100 LGBTQ groups too.
Yes, when I was first covering the bill, and I was like, you guys, it's called the Kids Online Safety Act, which if you don't look into this at all, you go, oh, that seems good, right?
Like the Patriot Act. Who's not a patriot?
Right, exactly. I'm like, but you need to listen to also kids themselves. But it's the fact that we don't take kids seriously, that we're like, stupid
That goes
kid.
back to
I was like, listen to them talking about this bill, how they recognize this bill is going to be used to suppress their freedom and to take away really, really valuable sources of information and community. And anyway, I do think it's like this huge issue with people, for the most part, not understanding legislation. Like, I think that's intentionally designed, right? Where they're like, we don't really want you to understand these bills, so we kind of dress it up, or, the media helps us disguise like what's really going on here. Because if people don't understand it, or if they're led to believe that it's going to do this one thing that seems great, but it's actually not, then there's not going to be any opposition to it. And then next thing you know, we are at this point where if you criticize Donald Trump, or if you criticize Israel, and you're a green card holder, visa holder, bye. Like, see ya.
And if you're an American, you're going to get, RICO charges against
Yes,
you for
exactly. Like,
protesting.
you're going to be charged with terrorism.
Yeah. And that is the natural, it's not even the natural consequence. That is the goal. And as Tech Dirt, I mean, I just think Tech Dirt has done such good work in this area. But like, as Mike Masnick broke that story of like, the Heritage Foundation is saying this. They're like, yes, this is what we're going to use these laws for. Brendan Carr, the new FCC chair, is like, yes, this is what we're going to do. Like, that's what's so crazy. The conservatives are not even like hiding. It's like Chris Rufo going in the Wall Street Journal and being like, yes, we are using outrage to dismantle DEI. And it's like they say it. And then these liberals and leftists still fall for it. And this is, by the way, I just want to say another thing. Like, if you care about free speech, you better be wearing a mask. You better be fighting for masks, because they're trying to, as you know, Kathy Hochul right now, everyone should call Kathy Hochul's office in New York. They're trying to ban masks again.
Well, it's interesting because the DHS agents who are deporting these student activists are wearing masks.
Exactly, because it's not about masks. Oops. I just changed the speaker. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good. Oh
my God.
Hold on.
It's about creating, if they actually cared about identity, most people don't even know this, but if you really want to protect your identity, wear sunglasses. Sunglasses, as they've shown in study after study, protect your identity from facial recognition far better than a mask. You should honestly wear both, but if you're like going to a protest or something. But the point is that like it's about shutting disabled people out of public life. It's about punishing people. It's about manufacturing consent for endless, disease reinfections. And it's about speech. It's about saying, hey, we'll ban this piece of clothing. We'll ban, whatever. So now when I walk down the street, I can arrest anyone. And it
Mm-hmm.
gives you pretense to just arrest anyone. And that is
Bad.
we need to fight these things. And
It's
instead
very
I see
bad.
leftists not doing that. And it drives me insane, especially ones on Twitter that are just like,
Yeah.
I think they just don't take free speech seriously and they don't realize what a dire situation we're in. And I think Gaza has woken a lot of people up, but Gaza is just the beginning.
Yeah.
Like sort of speech, and we really should care. And that's why I think Murder the Truth is really good, because it really lays out actually how this is an effort, as with everything at the right. Like this has been a decades in the making.
Mm-hmm.
And like I think people are just starting to wake up like, oh, things are going wrong. And it's like, guys, there's been this concerted effort that is so well funded for decades. And that's what we're up against. So please don't give an inch and say, listen to
Yeah,
any of
like
the
there's been this effort before social media, before the internet became such a part of our day-to-day lives. Like Republicans have been putting the wheels into motion since like before I was born.
and leveraging media and technology for it
Yes.
every time. They claimed that Walkmans were rewiring children's brains. And again, this was the efforts to ban like rap music and all that stuff. What is that about? It's about controlling the information ecosystem, controlling the culture that we can consume,
And it's also
controlling the ideas we're
distraction.
exposed to. Hmm.
Yeah, it's a really, really efficient distraction. You
Yeah.
know, it's like, oh, here's these economic issues that the Republicans are certainly not going to make any better with the policies that they are passing, and they recognize that, and so they have to offer up a distraction. They have to like dangle a carrot over here and keep people focused and angry, so they're not looking at what they're doing in Congress.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and I hope people can start to see through it. Like I said, it's so funny because they're like out there saying it in the open. And
Yeah, that is the crazy. That's how emboldened they are, because they know how much the narrative is on their side. That they are.
yeah.
It's Israel too, though. Israel
Yeah.
posts their own fucking war crimes on TikTok.
I was sick to my stomach watching it. I mean, every single day I see a new video that sticks to my stomach, of the last video of this 19-year-old that died.
Ugh,
And they shared his last video. Well, he's under the rubble and his sister is bleeding out and says, my back is broken. I can't even crawl to you. And like, yeah, no, we're watching a live stream genocide and they're still denying it. Like
I know.
there's no levels of denialism and cruelty and all this stuff. But again, that's why we need to have solidarity, and why we need to fight things like mask bans and care about those things as leftists, and fight
Mhm.
things like kids' online safety, and fight for free speech, basically. Just
Yeah.
please, we have to protect our civil liberties and recognize that, again, like same thing with misinformation. Liberals, I mean, this was more liberals than leftists, but like liberals, oh my God, they pushed the stupid misinformation thing for like 8 years of like, we need the internet to censor misinformation. What did Facebook do? They certainly didn't censor right-wing misinformation.
Oh no,
They
no.
started
They hired
censoring.
more. Mark Zuckerberg hired like super right wing dudes to come in and like make it even friendlier to
Yeah.
right wing rhetoric. Yeah, like they
And I
cannot be trusted to be
and
in
they're gonna
charge.
no, they're gonna also like it's like who gets deemed a terrorist, who gets silenced. Like
Yes.
this is why we need less profit-driven platforms, period. But
I
in the
mean,
meantime,
I remember even when Twitch rolled out that policy change where they were like, if you use the word Zionist as a
oh yeah,
slur, like in a negative way, then you'll like that was part of the new TOS rollout.
that's crazy.
And that comes from the fact that like Palestine and Israel is something that has been duked out a lot on Twitch, that there's a lot of people on this platform who have for the first time been exposed to a narrative that is not overtly pro-Israel because that was also happening on TikTok,
That's
because
why
that's
they
been
banned
happening.
TikTok.
It's been
That's
happening
why they banned
across the
TikTok.
internet. And so it's been a very powerful tool for people's awakening to the injustices that Palestinians have faced for decades. Like, there are a lot of people, even in this community, that have said, I didn't know anything. I didn't know anything before October 7th. And even in the beginning, I was just so indoctrinated by like, wait, Israel's our friend. So yeah, they're the good guys here. It wasn't until they like saw this genocide live stream themselves, until they engaged in in conversation on various Twitch channels, or like watching IDF soldiers literally post war crimes on TikTok.
Which is why they want to take away the internet. Like, just the fact that also like Palestinians and Palestinian journalists, how have we been getting access to information? Because let me tell you, if we didn't have social media we were able to ban kids until the age of 18, from using social media as they want to do, and ban and restrict all this content, we would not be seeing what's happening. We would not know what's happening. We would not be aware of the world again, because ultimately this is liberatory technology. I mean, not meta necessarily, but like the internet and the ability to connect and share information globally at such rapid speeds. And that's what they want to take away. They want this top-down information ecosystem that they can control. They don't want people to learn about the atrocities that the US government is doing, that Israel is doing. And so we have to protect that. We want to protect that. And there's a lot of like dissonance where you see the same people that are like, yes, free Palestine, and yes, we need to like protect their, the ability to kind of like get that information, are then feeding into this moral panic about kids.
Yeah.
And it's like, guys, how do you think they're going to censor that? They're not going to pass the let's censor Palestinian Speech Act. I mean, they're so brazen. I wouldn't even put that past them. But like, no, what they're going to do is they're going to launder this nonsense through the media. And by the way, the mainstream media, speaking of disinformation and misinformation, I mean, their coverage of this has been atrocious. It's completely broken my faith in traditional news.
Which I think a lot of people have felt the same way. And I think it's why they've gone to non-traditional outlets, right? Like, kids don't watch, they're not watching CNN. They're not watching MSNBC unless they're watching it on like a Twitch stream where somebody is breaking down.
There's commentary
where
about
there's
it, right?
commentary behind it. So it's the way that like younger generations have even changed how they consume their news, and primarily it's through the internet.
And it's like it's so interesting too to see like the mainstream media just like spiral out, because I just having worked at these places, like I really hope the jig is, I mean, I'm not a huge supporter of mainstream media. Like, I think there are good journalists at these places. David Enrich, perfect example, right? Like, phenomenal journalists, like Drew Harwell at the Washington Post, like one of the best in the game. And so we don't want to lose journalism. We want journalism to survive, but what we don't want to survive is corporate media of these conglomerates that are ultimately profit-driven media catering to a bunch of rich people in DC and New York.
That's why all these billionaires buy up these media companies
and like control them.
Yes, Jeff Bezos bought Washington Post to control what is coming out of there.
I mean, I left the Washington Post.
Yeah, yes, of course. Like, your former home.
I think you can see the effects of all of this stuff so transparently, especially if you work in it, and it's completely disheartening. And this is also why, when last summer, when all this stuff happened and my editor left, and basically like just so many things were happening at the Washington Post that made me want to leave. I was thinking like, well, should I just go work at another media organization? Should I work at one of these places I worked at before? Just go back. And it's just like, when you look around, I'm like, well, this whole system is corrupt. And why do I want to be part of it? I don't want to have to submit my story and have it changed, or not be able to do a story. I did a 5,000 word story that was this investigation I spent forever on, just never got published. Maybe it wasn't convenient. I don't know. Like, there's so many things like that. And so I think it's amazing that we have the tools of the internet now where people can build their own platform. And yes, that results in a lot of bad people building their platforms. But I think, again, that's why we don't want to cede all of the entire internet to the right.
Yeah, but the internet has been a lifeline for journalists like you, Ken Klippenstein, a bunch of Kat Tenbarge, a bunch of great journalists who basically could no longer work in the confines of their media company. And so
you can work, you just have to, you can't say what you think.
Right.
Like, if you just want to spout propaganda all day, You can have a long and successful career in media. The most successful people in media are the ones that just repeat powerful people's talking points. That's the
Yeah.
fastest way to get ahead at these organizations.
Yeah. It's like if you're if you're one of the media elites like a Jeffrey Goldberg at the Atlantic, then you've got a long, great career ahead of you where your interests will match up with the interests of what the state wants to push, and you will, you're not a subversive, you're not reporting in a way that is going to piss off the, national security officials who you're buddy with.
Yeah, exactly. Because you're not inherently antagonistic to those
Right,
people.
right.
You go to the same DC cocktail parties as them.
Yes.
You're
You
in the
have
same
them on
social circles.
Venmo.
Yeah. It's so crazy.
Yep. All right. Well, before we head out of here, any last thoughts? A reminder that we can find Taylor on User Mag and also on YouTube. You're putting out videos. I feel like you've been really consistent with that.
Oh my God. I'm about to upload one again today that
Nice.
like my friend helped me edit. I do almost everything. I mean, do like everything myself.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot of work. I know. I have to go do something after this for like this sponsor that I'm doing. But yeah, it's a lot of work, but it's great and it's important stuff. And
I just want to say one other thing too. So one thing that's been so hard, I just noticed like and I'm not like every time, like I'm often giving these like contrarian opinions, or rather it's like fact checking these moral panic viral narratives. So like this influencer law thing is a perfect example. The videos about this law pushing complete disinformation about the law have millions and tens of millions of views, literally. And they're pushed by these huge content creators and huge voices online. When you go to try to fact check it, you don't get anything. You don't get any views. So if you care about this stuff, please share the fact checks. Like if you see a journalist fact checking something and you realize you were wrong, don't just be like, oh, damn, I was wrong. I'm going to keep scrolling. Be like, oh, correct it. Like try to share that information and try to educate people on these issues. Cause I think just like, it's really hard to fight viral misinformation. It was the same thing with family vloggers moving out of California. People were like, family vloggers are moving out of California. That's actually not true. That was completely untrue. In fact, people are moving into California. But this was a viral thing. And I wrote a fact check of it and it got nothing.
Yeah, I mean, this is something like I've said to my chat, I've changed my mind on as I've learned really what this type of once upon a time, especially back in my more liberal days, I was very much so the internet is bad and the internet is bad for kids. And I didn't recognize like how many marginalized, how many youth, but particularly marginalized youth, like the internet has been a literal lifeline, has saved kids' lives. And so this is a topic that, yes, there is so little correct information out there to counter the very dominant narrative, right? It's not just something where if you go, okay, well, this is coming from Fox News, so I'm going to take this with a grain, I'm going to disregard this. But it's coming from so much of the media, even media that does skew more left. And so it is something where it's not, look, it's one of those things when like you don't know enough about something or you've been fed the wrong information or something has been framed that's actually pretty insidious. It's not like people's fault when that's all that they've gotten. But I do think like this is where digital media literacy comes in. This is where like understanding, okay, how do I source this type of information? How do I like really understand this piece of journalism? Who's the person who's writing this? What's the publication? How do I understand what this bill is actually saying? Like this is all educational type stuff that we all struggle with, that we all need to get better at. And yeah, it is unfortunate and it's super shitty that the perspective you take and the way like you push back is the minority. So it just gets drowned out. Like there's just not It's not enough of it. Like if you Google this topic, then what you're going to be fed is the opposite of like what somebody like you would write on.
Right. Which is so hard. And I'm like, yes, listen to me and Mike Mason and the people doing it. But also like, I think like it's always listening to the marginalized people that are harmed by these things too. Because like when we look at this stuff, like you talk about like the internet, right? We have to listen to kids. We want to listen to kids that are affected by these laws. Like when we talk about like Gaza, Israel stuff, like by the way, please, I hope everyone can see. If you think that the media is only giving you misinformation about Gaza, no. Recognize the way misinformation is and propaganda is essentially woven into a lot of these big stories from these major outlets. Now apply that to every single issue, okay? And start to have some critical thinking skills and start to realize that it's all shaped by interests. And you should follow reporters that are good at these places, but a lot of reporters are not good. So again, it's more like listening to the people that are harmed, whether it's, you know, especially with Gaza, it's like, okay, listen to the people being bombed, right? Like listen to the people harmed with COVID, which the media continues to lie about. Lie. If you believe the government narrative on COVID, I'm so sorry. You were completely lied to. There is nothing true that is being like they've lied to people left, right, and center about this disease that is still killing thousands of people, disabling tens of millions permanently. And, you know, listen to disabled people. Disabled people have been sharing correct information for decades. Well, thankfully, COVID has been around decades, but years, right? Being like, hey, by the way, just the way that they tried to minimize the HIV epidemic, here's what they're doing to COVID. And I'm not trying to say that, like, you know, oh, that means you have to stay inside. Da, da, da. No, it means that disease mitigation is important and we should take steps to preserve public health, right? Like this disinformation about COVID that the media has been presenting is the same the way that they've been presenting disinformation about Gaza, disinformation about LGBTQ people, disinformation about like cell phones and stuff. Like we should just listen to the people being harmed by these narratives and hear what they have to say, because they usually know, they have to know about these issues. They have to read the laws. So many of these articles about the child influencer laws, they just say parents. The law applies to parents. No, the law applies to content creators, which they define as anybody putting content on the internet.
Which is
so anyone.
A lot.
Everyone. Which is not parents. But if you were to read these articles, you think that it only applies to parents or parenting bloggers. No, it applies to anybody posting social media content.
Yeah.
So anyway, just like I feel like because it's hard to know what journalists to trust, but like we should listen to like the marginalized. Like,
I mean, that's how I started to change my mind on just how I viewed kids on the internet and their access to social media. Was like I just actually listen to kids, you know, not even just teen activists, but kids in general talk about how important the internet is for them. And anyway, this is not saying like y'all, obviously, as Taylor and I have both said, I think this isn't something that we're like, no, there's no problems, like nothing that we need to change the norms around, or, you know, things that are reasonable that are not resulting in like free speech restrictions. That's the problem that we're talking about here. But anyway, thank you so much for coming on. Loved this conversation. Again, Taylor's User Mag, that's her Substack. She's also on Twitter. She's online. She has her YouTube. Let me. Okay, yeah, I have it linked there. Also, the recommendations if you want to read or listen to a podcast that gets into this topic more. I had linked earlier, but you know what? I'm just gonna link them.
My podcast is on my YouTube too. So
okay, great. Shit podcast is on your YouTube. Excellent. Yeah, I mean, you are kind of one of my go-to tech and culture queen reporters. Like I've learned a lot from your writing.
Likewise. You do such a good job covering pop culture. I don't know if you saw, by the way, the Candace Owens House and Habit meltdown yesterday.
No.
They were fighting. Oh my God. It was so messy.
Okay. I'm going to have to take a look. Ooh. Yes, I try to do what I can. We're all trying to do our part here in countering disinformation, trying to make this world a better place for everyone. And that's all we can do.
Thank you. Thank you
That's
for having
it.
me. I thought of you because they were like arguing who was the first to cover pop culture on the
Oh God.
internet.
Oh my God. No, I have to look. I have to look at that immediately. I was like very focused on the Rachel Zegler situation. I've been
Yeah,
covering that the last couple of
it's
days.
crazy.
So I did not take a look at the latest thing with Candace, but you know I will be.
It's crazy.
God.
Well, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
This was so
Oh my
fun.
gosh. Thanks again. I will see you. I will talk to you soon. We'll
Talk to you
probably have you
soon.
on another time soon. Everyone say
Bye,
bye.
guys. Bye.
Bye. Oh, okay. All right, everybody. I am sweaty. Sean, thank you so much for the raid. Wonder Gal, thank you for the 10 gifted subs. Space Cadet, thank you for the 9 months. Um, I I hope that was a great conversation for you guys. I always learn a lot from Taylor, and I get that this is a topic that's it's tricky because it requires nuance. It's recognizing like issues that do exist on the internet, on social media platforms, but not tumbling down into this moral panic rabbit hole that then we're pushing for legislation that restricts people's free speech, pushing for legislation that takes away the internet from people under the age of 16. She's so passionate. She is very passionate. Taylor, this is an area of expertise for her. She gets this stuff a lot. And like I said, it's, she's like one of the few journalists I know who's really actually reporting on this stuff accurately, who's addressing the very real repercussions that will result from this type of legislation. And it's why I was like, otherwise, if if you're looking up, if you're Googling, if you're looking up information on these bills, on this topic, what you're largely going to be fed to you is information that feeds into this moral panic around children and the internet. She hits the what this is really about without speculation. Right. And I think that, it's like one of my favorite podcasts is You're Wrong About, and they have a really great episode on moral panics, on cancel culture, on like just how this is, this all just repeats, whether it was a moral panic around romance literature, or it was a moral panic around television, it was a moral panic around the phone, it's a moral panic around whatever, cancel culture, right? That these are things that repeat, that are common tactics that come from the right because of how effective they are, how great of a distraction that they are. I read the Anxious Generation book, was greatly confused on the structure and comments. God, you guys covered it. It's such a popular book. Yeah, it is a very popular book. And I want to be clear too. I think the show Adolescence is great. I think I talked about that show. What my concern was, and what I was trying to discuss with Taylor, is how now the responses to that show are feverish, increased calls for taking social media and taking phones away from minors under the age of 16, which is not the solution here. If you watch Adolescence and you think the way to solve the cultural, both offline and online cultural issues of that show is to take the internet away from kids 16 and under, then you're taking away the wrong thing. And I know it doesn't really help that the show creator is going around being like, I don't want this to just spur conversation, I want this to spur legal action. But it's like, dude, okay, this is the problem. Like, this is emotional, right? It elicits an emotional response. People are watching a show like this and they're like, oh my God, it's just so many emotions. And that's where you can become susceptible, where the moral panic oversimplifies policy approaches where you appeal to people's base emotions, and then it leaves no room for rational thought, leaves no room. It's just surface level shit that comes at the expense of actual nuance. You know? Yes, a reactionary solution. Right. So it's part of the distraction. It's part of the distraction to not address people's economic insecurities, the need to improve the working class's material conditions. You dangle the carrot over here where you're like, no. The problem is the internet. Stuff like that. All right. Anyway, I have to go get some work done, and oh my God, I am tie-tie. I'm tie-tie. Taylor's latest and third latest videos on free speech legislation are so good. She knows her shit. She does. Regardless of creator interviews, the show itself seems to advocate more for parents putting their kids first than like Instagram bullying manosphere destroyed this kid. Yeah. You know, alleviating the parents' economic insecurities will help improve kids' lives, right? It'll give parents more time to give parents more time to spend with their kids, to focus on being able to guide them. And anyway, so I will, what's her mag? It is user mag. If you do exclamation guest, it's all right there. But I will see you guys later tonight. I will be back. I'll be back. I'll be back. Will and I are going to be doing a stream. Not sure what for, but I will finally be showing you guys the promo, the stunt sequence that I shot, the stunt thing that I did, which is super cool. Okay. Who am I going to send you guys to? I will send you over to I'll send you guys to Jay Marianne. How about that? How about I did not spell that right. No, I did not. There you go. Okay. Is that right? I don't know. I can't really see right now. I gotta lay down. Anywho, thank you for joining me this morning. I will hopefully see you all later. I mean, I'll be here, but the question is, will you be? But yeah, I'll be back. I'll be back, everybody. Bye-bye.